From Britain's newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Conservative Party Conference 2023. Join me as I take you through the beating heart of the action and what promises to be one of the most important party conferences in modern political history. I'm going in strong at the top with Deputy Party Chairman Lee Anderson. He'll be talking to me about whether or not work-shy people should have their benefits cut. Michael Fabricant will be in the hot seat next. He's going to have a chat with me about whether or not we should leave the ECHR, whether we should turn the boats back. A massive issue dividing this party and indeed the nation. Kemi Badenoch, tipped by many to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. We'll hear from her this hour as well. She says that the Tories are the only party who can definitively tell you what a woman is. And the biggest noise of the day so far, the biggest shock for many, was Nigel Farage walking this very path to this very studio here. He will also be on my show. And are there rumblings that he could even rejoin the Conservative Party? Surely not. It's all to play for. Yes, indeed. Loads on today. I've also got the latest on this afternoon's huge breaking news story on HS2. Will we be reporting very soon that the latest leg to Manchester has been scrapped? I've got Deputy Chair of the party, Lee Anderson, with me. Liam Halligan will be picking through it, as well as, of course, our political editor, Christopher Hope, and much, much more. So that's all to play for now, between now and 6 o'clock. But first, it's your latest headlines with Ray.
Thanks, Patrick. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 3. Our top stories this hour. Donald Trump has arrived at a court in New York where he's due to stand trial in a civil fraud case. Now, we should be able to see pictures coming to us live from Manhattan, where the former US president is accused of inflating the value of his assets by billions of dollars to secure better loan and insurance terms. And for those of you watching on television, we can see live footage there of Donald Trump speaking outside the civil court in New York City. Now, of course, this comes a week after the judge found that Mr. Trump was liable for fraud and will largely concern the penalties that he must face. Now, the prosecutor is seeking $250 million in fines and a permanent ban against Trump from running businesses in New York. We'll bring you more on this story as we get it. Well, a government source has told GBNews that no decisions have been taken on HS2 following reports that the Manchester leg has been axed. It follows increased speculation about the rail project's future, with a number of government ministers calling for the project to be reviewed due to spiralling costs. The Chancellor says it shouldn't cost 10 times more to build a railway in the UK than just across the Channel in France. A second police force is investigating allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. In a statement, Thames Valley Police said it's received new information relating to harassment and stalking allegations dating back to 2018. They added that it would be inappropriate to comment on an ongoing investigation. It follows a joint investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4. Russell Brand denies all accusations of criminality. The Chancellor has announced plans to freeze the expansion of the civil service and reduce its numbers to pre-pandemic levels. During his speech at the Conservative Party conference, Jeremy Hunt said it would save the government £1 billion next year. Meanwhile, the Chancellor announced tougher benefits sanctions on those who are capable of working but choose not to, and a national living wage rise to £11 per hour.
We promised in our manifesto to raise the national living wage to 2/3 of median income, ending low pay in this country. At the moment, it's £10.42 an hour, and we're waiting for the Low Pay Commission to tell us next year's recommendation. But I confirm today, whatever that recommendation, we'll increase the national living wage to at least £11 an hour next year. That's a pay rise for 2 million workers.
Well, Liz Truss has called on the Chancellor to cut corporation tax back to 19% in his next autumn statement. Speaking at a fringe rally, the former Prime Minister urged the Tory leadership to axe the tax, cut bills and build homes. Her comments come after Jeremy Hunt told GB News that no substantial tax cuts are possible this year. Ms Truss said businesses are now choosing not to locate in the UK and they shouldn't be treated like a cash cow to be milked.
We need to unleash business across Britain. We need people to want to invest in our country. We need businesses to be able to expand, to grow, to create new jobs, to create new ideas. That's why I'm calling upon the Chancellor at the autumn statement to put corporation tax back down to 19%. And frankly, if we can get it lower, the better.
Junior doctors and consultants in England have started a 3-day walkout, the longest ever period of joint strike action. Until Thursday at 7 a.m, they'll deliver what's been described as Christmas Day levels of staffing. Their last joint strike in September led to almost 130,000 appointments being rescheduled. The government says the walkout is doing a massive disservice to patients. These doctors told us why they've walked.
Unless there is a credible pay offer, it will mean that doctors of all grades, but especially senior doctors, will continue to leave the country for other places, and the NHS will continue to suffer.
We are not planning for the future. There is going to be no staffing in the NHS. There's going to be no NHS in the future if we don't fight for our pay. So this isn't really necessarily a fight about individual consultant pay per se. We're actually fighting for the very future of the NHS.
And finally, GB News can reveal that more than 25,000 migrants have crossed the English Channel so far this year. Around 350 migrants in up to 8 boats were intercepted by Border Force vessels and brought ashore to Dover Harbour this morning. On Saturday, 537 people crossed in 9 small boats. That's according to official figures released by the Home Office. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now let's get back to Patrick.
Welcome along to Conservative Party Conference 2023 with me, Patrick Christys. Now, there's only one place to start, and that is the future or potential lack of HS2. A senior government source has told GBNews that no decision has been made about whether the northern leg of HS2 should be scrapped. But after a week of speculation, it is now being reported that Rishi Sunak has decided to ditch the high-speed rail link between Manchester and Birmingham. Where are we? Manchester. Yes, not a particularly great look. I'm joined in the studio by the wonderful Liam Halligan, of course, our economics and business editor. I've got Christopher Hope, who's our political editor, and I've got the man himself, Lee Anderson of our parish, but also, of course, the deputy chair of the Tory party. Can you just fill us in, Christopher, first on where we actually are? So what's the latest then?
The latest is that there are widespread reports that they have axed leg between Manchester and Birmingham. That was the leg which currently HS2, this high-speed link, goes from Birmingham to Old Oak Common, about 5 miles outside London, and that's it. And there have been lots of speculation. Indeed, this morning the Chancellor said to us there's been no actual decision yet. It will be made soon. We're told by the government that no decision has been made yet, but we do think it looks like the mood music here is increasingly likely has been axed. Yeah. My colleague Catherine Force has heard that from a senior colleague. I think how it looks, a helicopter view, stand back on this, it looks dreadful for the government's levelling up agenda. We're here in Manchester. All the money was spent on tunnelling underground in the south of England. They can't even link Birmingham to Manchester with this fast train.
Well, there we go. Lee, if it does emerge, as is becoming increasingly expected, that they will announce that they've scrapped that leg. How would you feel about that?
Well, let's be honest, Patrick, no decision made yet, so it's a bit of speculation at the moment from Chopper, but, people want a decision. That's the most important thing. They want a yay or a nay on this, because when I'm out and about in my constituency, and you're talking to people here, members and activists, whatever, it doesn't really come up that much, to be honest. Yes, HS2, it produces jobs and employment and training and opportunities.
It comes up here, though, Lee, doesn't it?
Because you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble. You're in a bubble in this place, Patrick, but actually on the doorstep.
Manchester, Lee, I don't just mean Conservative Conference, in Manchester, in the places where this thing was supposed to go.
You have to realise, Patrick, the whole country's got to pay for this. Every single taxpayer in the UK has got to pay for this project, and it's spiralling out of control. Now, I'm easy with it. If it goes ahead, I'll support it. If they scrap it, I'll support that either way. But we need a decision, and we need it very, very soon. Because, like I say, the costs each week are out of control.
So you really do have no strong feelings either way as to whether or not HS2 is scrapped. It's supposed to be levelling up.
When it was proposed to come to Ashfield, I opposed it, and I opposed it with Boris Johnson at the time. He scrapped it, and it's no longer coming to Ashfield. I'm delighted, and so are my constituents. It's as simple as that.
Chopper, I can see your screeny face up there a bit.
I wonder why you're delighted, Lee. I mean, this is a project which has spent £100 billion upwards on. It would cost more. You can't see a bigger white elephant that almost is a complete, an insult to your government's legacy on levelling up by not linking Manchester to Birmingham, and tunnelling under the south to save the views of people in the south.
You go out in the streets of Ashfield and Nottinghamshire and the Midlands and ask them about levelling up, and they'll say sort our roads out, sort our schools out, sort our hospitals out. They won't say build another railway called HS2. That'll be the bottom of their agenda.
All right, Liam, I'll bring you in on this now, economics and business editor. Does it make financial sense to plough ahead with HS2 or to scrap the thing to Manchester?
Well, we've already spent about £30 billion on the London to Birmingham leg, as Chopper just said. The Euston Gateway, sort of like cathedral-like station in central London, that's been put on hold. So for now, it seems HS2 is going to terminate at Old Oak Common, which is in West London, the suburb of Acton. And then you've got to get on the tube to get to central London, which will take longer than the conventional train from Birmingham to London. Look, if we just do London to Birmingham, HS2 will be a complete white elephant. We already have 2 railway lines from London to Birmingham, Euston, New Street, and Marylebone into Snow Hill. These are decent railways. Just take 20 minutes off that journey makes no sense if it's costing you tens of billions of pounds.
Chopper, one sec. Sorry, Liam. Sorry.
So I've got a statement here. A statement here from number 10 just dropped in my inbox. These reports are inaccurate. No final decision has been taken on phase 2 of HS2. Now that's where we were this morning, but a lot of people are saying we are hearing from other people. Other ministers are telling people that it has been axed. So it is not clear right now.
It is inevitable, though, that number 10 are going to say that because they don't want to knock the Chancellor and his freeze on the civil service and his raising of the minimum wage, even though business will pay for that.
But that's now happened. His speech has happened.
Off the front pages, off the front. They want to try and keep control of the news. Now, we're all hearing from different sources within government, people who are upset that HS2 has been scrapped. We're all hearing that the decision's actually been made. Look, if we just do London to Birmingham, it's a white elephant. I think Lee's right. I mean, I've made a lot of documentaries in the past about HS2. People want, in the north of England, they want Trans-Pennine routes, they want better buses, they want better roads. They don't want a high-speed rail line that goes through all the northern towns and doesn't stop. That's the problem with it. And high-speed rail, it generally just brings more business to the capital. That's what the experience of France and Spain show.
Look, so the government there's coming out and saying this is a load of nonsense, what we're being told behind the scenes here. That, go on, read that statement again quickly, Chopper.
It says here, Numbertown spokesman, so it's very rare they ever issue statements on these things. These reports are inaccurate, not wrong, but inaccurate. Let's wait and see. No final decisions have been taken on phase 2 of HS2. What that might mean is he might announce in his speech, the PM tomorrow, they're going to put more money into the link between Hull, Manchester and Liverpool. That could be what they're doing. The bits of HS2.
All right, Lee, go on.
Well, you know what, Patrick, what I want in my community and across the north and in the Midlands is for a little old lady to be able to get on a bus in one village to get to the next village. I don't want that little old lady sat there looking through her living room window and seeing a train going by at 120 mile an hour, a train that she can never get on ever in her life. That's what I want. Better local connectivity.
Business may want something else. Business can't get on the bus like the old lady.
This is actually an interesting divide within the party, right? Because
I don't think it's a divide. I want better connectivity, and like, we live in this bubble, Patrick, and we work in this bubble where we think everybody goes to London every day to work, and they don't. 99% of my residents, my constituents, never get on a train. I get on a train, but they don't, and they don't go anywhere on a train. So
I don't profess to know the party better than the deputy chair, but from my soundings, I've been covering this party my whole adult life. I don't actually think HS2 is very popular within the Conservative Party, among party activists. If Rishi Sunak, for all the embarrassment, you know, absolutely, we're in a former train depot here. If he takes the brickbats for scrapping or shelving Birmingham to Manchester, if that frees up tens of billions for tax cuts or for better buses or for a Trans-Pennine route that actually works, then I think people in the Conservative Party will cheer.
So actually, Lee, you should be brave, because Lee has made a series of great points there. It's not that popular. Even the people who came up with HS2, I'm not convinced actually thought it would ever come to fruition. We now do have a cost of living crisis. That money could be spent elsewhere. Rural connectivity, Midlands and Northern connectivity. If Rishi Sunak was brave, what he'd do is he'd come out right now and scrap the thing, wouldn't he?
Well, I think if you gave the public a choice, especially where I live, between high-speed rail and better buses and tram services and local regional railways, they'd go for the latter, obviously. It makes common sense and it's cheaper.
But what we can't get around, Christopher, is the fact that the Conservatives have been in power for 13 years. We've been ploughing ahead with this, and it has been a catastrophic waste of money. And regardless of whether or not people think the right decision comes around in the end, the fact is a load of money has just been burnt.
Yes, in the government's defence, they have spent 400 billion on a COVID pandemic since 2020. They've got 100 billion more has gone, well, a lot more money has gone on supporting Ukraine war. So there are extra costs on the exchequer, and that's what's driving this review by Jeremy Hunt. But I think if you take just a step back, it's a complete testament, I think, to a failure, I think, to link the north and the south properly, to spend all the money to save those views in the Cotswolds, tunnel underground, and then you can't afford a link between Birmingham and Manchester. Is a disgrace.
You think he'll come up with something else? You think he might soften that, you massage it a bit and say, OK, we're not doing
Almost certainly he will look at ways of extra spending in the north, linking, as I say, between Hull, Manchester and Liverpool. There's bits of the northern very part of HS2 spur they need for that link, isn't it, Lee?
It's true, it's absolutely true.
And if he does that, that'll be more popular, possibly, than, say, if Keir Starmer goes, no, we're just going to plough ahead with it.
Well, look, we're a selfish bunch, especially in politics, and constituents are selfish as well. They want, like I say, I keep saying it, better local connectivity. They want to get on a bus, a train, a tram to the next town. That's what they want. They don't come to London. They don't go to Birmingham. They don't go to Manchester.
If I was the PM tomorrow, you spin this by saying, look, last week I moved the time back to net zero for 2035. I'm making unpopular choices for national interest. That's what we'll say tomorrow.
Well, hang on, what's the slogan of this place here again? Long-term decision-making for a brighter future, or whatever it is. I mean, that's what that is.
I was talking to Alistair Darling the other day, former Chancellor, former Labour Transport Secretary, of course. Alistair Darling was the Labour politician who signed the original document which proposed HS2. The train left the station.
2008-9.
And Alistair Darling said to me, indeed in 2009, I signed the document but I didn't think they'd be stupid enough to actually go through with this.
There you go.
There you go.
Right.
Another GB
Hollow
News.
laughter.
Okay, so look, we are where we are with HS2. That is about as far as we can kind of take the discussion right now. We've spoken about the waste of money, whether or not it gets scrapped, all the kind of different permutations politically. Can I just refer a bit to something else that Jeremy Hunt was talking about, which was about the civil service, etc. You know, a bloated civil service, a waste of taxpayers' money, is it? Should we be cutting it back, getting them off the wage?
Hallelujah, Patrick. That's what we want to hear. You know, we've known for far too long a health service, our local councils, our district, our county councils. There's too much waste in there. We're creating too many roles, too many diversity officers. It's a load of nonsense. We all know it. The public know it. We need to trim it back and save some money and give the taxpayer good value for money.
Will we get better taxpayer for money, taxpayer value for money, Liam? Do you think?
I think it'll be tough because the civil service are past masters at entrenching themselves, getting their own way, making passive-aggressive behaviour, making life difficult for ministers. I want to see more nurses and doctors. I want to see more police. I want to see fewer pen pushers in Whitehall working from home on their Peloton machines all day at my expense.
Well, it does stick in the craw, absolutely, that we have this idea of a seismic work-from-home culture within the civil service, while other people are trying to get up and get out.
Nurses can't work from home. Yeah, people work in factories.
And the question that always trips people up, by the way, when you get people from the unions on is why is a diversity officer worth 3 nurses? They never answer that. Christopher, do you think it makes political sense to say what Jeremy Hunt said today about that?
Yes, it does, and it's on him. This party's been in power for 13 years. They can do these things that Liam was talking about, and Lee's talking about. There's a guy called Steve Barclay, Health Secretary. He's cut 1 in 6 jobs in his department. It can be done. It takes a lot of willpower. He's a former Chief Secretary of Treasury, sat on the Public Accounts Committee, he knows about how money is spent. He can deal with it. With a political will, Patrick, they can do it, but they have failed that. Your party's failed this in 13 years, Lee.
Well, it's difficult, Chopper, to get the grips with it. It's got a culture.
Well, that's not enough. You're paid a salary to do it.
You've got a culture within the civil service. This has come from 97, 98, from Blair's days, where they are awkward. As Liam said, they can go on strike. They can work from home.
They can leak.
They can leak stuff. Yeah, we can be obstructive in the Home Office. We've seen it. At least we're trying to tackle it head on.
Is there a genuine concern or thought within the Conservative Party that you are day in, day out doing battle with civil service, that they are actively against you?
I think it's not just us as politicians within the Conservative Party that sort of know. I think the country sort of know that as well, Patrick. You know, we've seen it with the nurses, the fire brigade unions. We've seen it with the civil service. There is a battle. It's been like a concerted effort since the pandemic, since we've come out of COVID. It's been like attack after attack on the government over public sector pay. But no, we've got to be strong. We've got to be strong. We've got to face them out. We see it with the junior doctors at the moment, and they will stop at nothing to bring this government down.
Okay, all right. Look, one more with you. Would you be happy if Nigel Farage joined the Conservative Party?
No.
Why not?
Because he'd take all the limelight off me.
Oh, you wouldn't turn down his membership, though, would you? No.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
it's his first party conference since 1987.
Yeah.
You and I, Patrick, were at a dinner, the Conservative Democratic Organisation, and Nigel Farage got a huge shout out from Priti Patel and a massive round of applause.
Can I say, I haven't seen an MP, a politician mobbed here like he was today since Boris Johnson was here a few years ago.
Interesting.
I'm telling you.
I think, watch this space. Just watch this space.
Oh, hello.
Stranger things have happened, okay?
He's only going to join a party if he can lead it.
Stranger things have happened.
You must know something, Patrick.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Look, what a way to start the show. Thank you very much, chaps. Great stuff. We'll have loads more on this huge story. That's about HS2 a little later in the hour. You get more on that right now on our website. It's a fast-moving story, that, unlike the actual project itself. GBNews.com, fastest-growing national news website in the nation. All the best analysis, big opinion, and the latest breaking news. But immigration is, of course, one of the big issues dominating this party conference. It's dominating the discussions around your dinner table, whether you're driving around in your car. It's what a lot of you are talking about. And GB News can reveal that more than 25,000 migrants have now crossed the channel so far this year. Last week, Suella Braverman floated the idea of leaving the ECHR. Well, is this what Tory members want? Michael Fabricant joins me very shortly to get stuck right into arguably the biggest issue for you, the people. Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to not so sunny Manchester inside the conference hall here at Conservative Party conference. You are watching and listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Now coming to you live, like I've said, from this wonderful conference hall here. Now later this hour, I will talk all things net zero with the Tory MP who won a by-election in what was seen as a protest vote against Sadiq Khan's ULEZ expansion. And net zero is becoming an increasingly important topic on the doorstep. So it'll be a big interview, that. Make sure you stay tuned for it. But one of Rishi Sunak's famous 5 pledges is to stop the boats. I think that's a phrase he wishes he's never said, but he did say it and he kept repeating it. He stood in a plinth with "Stop the Boats" on it, so it's perhaps unfortunate for the Prime Minister that we have reached another landmark today. GB News can reveal that 25,000 migrants have now crossed the Channel in small boats this year. So look, I went out and about a little bit earlier on, pounding the pavement here at Tory Party conference to find out what young Tory Party members thought about whether we should leave the ECHR.
I think that it would be the wise thing to do for this country because a massive part of us leaving the European Union is to take back control of our ability to dictate who gets into the country on our terms. And I think the last major hurdle to that is the ECHR and the authority of the courts in Strasbourg and in Europe.
I don't think the ECHR itself is the problem. The problem, I think, is the way it's translated into British law, such as the Human Rights Act, the Equality Act. I think it just needs to be reformed and looked at again. The Conservatives need to come and look at it again, and then perhaps legislate it more properly in a more modern way so that it doesn't interfere with their agenda.
We need to be able to take back control of all our laws, and one thing that the ECHR is stopping us doing is sorting out the boats issue, and we need to sort that out. So we should put our country first and say, no, we should leave the ECHR and we're going to stop the boats.
Look, not a massive amount of diversity there, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. Genuinely, that does seem to be the general consensus in the particular rooms that I am in here at Conservative Party conference. Interestingly, and especially amongst the young. I'm joined now by Sir Michael Fabricant. Sir Michael, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show.
Can I just say...
you, sir. Yes,
no. And also, I didn't like the fact you said among the young. But now we have Michael Fabricant.
Well, I can only apologise. I didn't mean that. I never would, of course. You've held yourself together nicely. Now, so, should we leave the ECHR?
If the ECHR stopped the Supreme Court from saying, yes, we can take people out to Rwanda, and we can't get an exemption, Sweden and one or two other countries got exemptions for certain things, so lots of ifs. If we can't get any of that, yes, the United Kingdom Supreme Court should be the Supreme Court. It isn't supreme if the ECHR can overrule it.
Look what you've got on your lapel there. It's the Union flag. It's the flag of Ukraine. What do you say to people who will say, if we're out of the ECHR, we're just like Russia and Belarus?
I would say we helped set up the ECHR, as did the United States. But you know what? The United States said, we don't need a court in Strasbourg to tell us how to be decent human beings. And I would say, you know what? Britain doesn't need to have lessons from French and Germans who did some pretty awful things in the Second World War. Yes, the French too. And you know, this country can be proud of its human rights record. Yes, we should support the ECHR. We should help fund them.
Okay.
But to be told by the ECHR that our Supreme Court is wrong?
Yeah.
No, that's what it was never set up for.
Why don't Conservative Party members get a vote on it?
Oh, I think because we don't do referendums in this country.
It's an internal one, though, isn't it? When it's shaped just government policy, that could be.
Well, you could say that about everything.
You let leaders like that sometimes. Not this one, it must be said.
Well, let's have a referendum on the future of HS2. That would solve it pretty quickly.
Yeah, there are a few key issues I think that it would be worthwhile having a referendum on. One of them I'm going to be talking about a bit later on about net zero as well, actually. But when it comes to pulling out the ECHR, taking back control of our borders, getting some flights to Rwanda off the ground. You know, Rishi Sunak's going to be talking in one of the rooms behind me here tomorrow, I believe it is. I mean, do you want him to talk about that? Do you want him to say that? Because otherwise, you're just plodding along and the boats continue to come, no?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I'd also say this to Rishi, if he occasionally watches GB News, which I know he does. Rishi's instincts are great.
Right.
Rishi's instincts are really sound, and a lot of Conservative members would go with his instincts. He has got to stop listening to advisors, stop reading the autocue, and say what he really believes.
I mean, it's the opposite of what my producers want me to do, which is read the autocue more and stop going off piste. So there we go. But I was at an event last night. Priti Patel was there, Lord Cruddas was there, major party donor. What he said in front of everyone was that people should stop donating to the Conservative Party because it's disengaged with its grassroots. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. A, I don't agree that they shouldn't carry on giving money, and I don't agree that it's disengaged from its grassroots. But I do think that the Conservative Party, like the Labour Party actually, sometimes gets just a little bit too tangled up in its own management structures. As I say, Rishi's the leader. If he goes for his instincts, we'll get there.
If he goes to his instincts, and I believe that you're right in what you say there, which is I think if Rishi Sunak goes with his instincts, he will be more in line with what the Conservative Party base wants. So there you go.
And what is right for the UK too.
In your view. Now, final question. Should Nigel Farage become a member of the Conservative Party again? Should he be allowed to?
I think we should go on our hands and knees and beg him, and I think we should award him with a knighthood, which he should have had years ago. And I think that the way the Conservative Party, well, they would argue that the way Nigel Farage has treated the Conservative Party, so it's probably 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. But yes, listen, I was here when Nigel Farage walked into the place about 2 or 3 hours ago. Everyone was saying, what's happening? Is Rishi? Because everyone was rushing forward. Security meant it was Nigel Farage arriving. We love him. Listen, we would still be in the European Union if it hadn't been for Nigel Farage forcing, in effect, the referendum on David Cameron. So, yes.
So you would let Nigel Farage back into the Tories?
I would invite him back into the Conservative Party.
Strong stuff. Very strong stuff. Sir Michael, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Great to have you on the show.
Patrick.
I'll be seeing you again tomorrow, I think. Sir Michael Fabricant there. Right, loads more still to come between now and 4 o'clock. Rishi Sunak has been criticised for watering down the government's net zero targets. Criticised by some, mostly legacy media, I think. And anyway, I'm going to speak to a Tory MP, of course, who won a by-election after a backlash against London's controversial ULEZ scheme. That, I think, was a watershed moment and something that will play heavily at the next election. But right now, it's your headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Patrick. It's 3:32. Our top stories. A government source has told GBNews that no decisions have been taken on HS2. It's after unconfirmed reports that the Manchester leg of the rail project has been axed. There's been increased speculation about the rail project's future, with a number of government ministers calling for the project to be reviewed due to spiralling costs. Liz Truss has called on the Chancellor to cut corporation tax back to 19% in his next autumn statement. Speaking at the Fringe rally, the former Prime Minister urged the Tory leadership to axe the tax, cut bills and build homes. And a second police force is investigating allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. In a statement, Thames Valley Police said it's received new information relating to harassment and stalking allegations which date back to 2018. It follows a joint investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4. Russell Brand denies all accusations of criminality. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Let's take a look at today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2123 and €1.1548. Price of gold, £1,508.93 per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,524 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
That's right. This conference is less than a fortnight since Rishi Sunak watered down the government's net zero targets. Over the weekend, he unveiled measures that, in his words, will slam the brakes on the war on motorists. So the Tories' candidate for London Mayor, Susan Hall, has also promised to scrap Sadiq Khan's controversial ULEZ scheme. And, let's be honest, ULEZ and net zero will have a massive role to play at the next general election for a variety of different reasons. It taps into how much do you care about the environment. It also, crucially, taps into how much do you care about the money in your pocket. And I'm joined now by the Tories' newest MP, Steve Tuckwell. He won Boris Johnson's old seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip on the outskirts of London in what was widely seen as a protest vote against the ULEZ expansion. I'm not sure how much you'll appreciate that. I'm sure you were also deeply popular, Steve. But Steve joins me now.
Good to be here.
So, Steve, you are fresh into Parliament. This issue now of ULEZ and net zero, is the answer to Rishi Sunak staring him in the face, which is to go even further on net zero?
Well, I think, you just got to look at the Uxbridge by-election and the constituents in my patch, were very clear about their message that they wanted me to centre Sadiq Khan, which was an absolute opposition to ULEZ expansion. He completely ignored those constituents and he's gone ahead with it anyway. As we know, ULEZ wasn't an environmental policy, it was a tax grab, for his failings of TfL finances.
personally don't believe that there's any environmental benefit to ULEZ, because obviously some people will push back on that and they will say, well, look, it's cleaner air, it's going to save lives, it's better for our kids.
Yeah, but I'm reading the reports that the Mayor published himself, which demonstrated a negligible impact in air quality improvement. And we can also see his own forecasts, which suggest that Hillingdon, part of my constituency, with Heathrow Airport in its boundaries as well, will have the second best air quality in London by the year 2025. So, you know, outer London is completely different to inner London for air quality, and there was no need to expand ULEZ and hammer the good people of Uxbridge and South Ryde.
OK, so here we are at Conservative Party conference. What do you want Rishi Sunak to say about things like net zero, about things like ULEZ, dare I say even, I don't know, 20-mile-an-hour speed limits and all of this stuff? You know, do you want him to come out stronger? Did he go far enough when he was saying he's going to delay things?
Well, he certainly came out and as he said, he's put the brakes on the war on motorists, and I completely agree with that. You know, there's far too much, you know, hammering of motorists in outer London, certainly in my constituents, you know, are totally against that. We've got a mayor that's soft on crime, but he's heavy on motorists, you know, hard on motorists, and we need to make sure that we've got the right policies in place. Rishi Sunak,
should he scrap net zero altogether?
No, and I think, you know, we're still heading towards net zero as a government policy, but we need to be doing it in a measured way and taking people with us. We saw in the by-election that, you know, people it's too fast, too quick. You know, they had 9 months notice to ULEZ, and it wasn't in his initial manifesto either. You know, the expansion of ULEZ, you know, into inner London and the South Circular and the North Circular was included in the manifesto, and it did have a lot of notice included with it as well.
Forgive me for this, but when you were elected, there were some, I'm going to say, relatively uncomfortable shots of you and Rishi Sunak. Do you like him?
Yeah, I think he's a great Prime Minister. We're going to hear from him tomorrow. We've certainly heard some announcements over the past couple of days. You know, we've got issues of substance, and, you know, the Uxbridge by-election was an issue of substance that people of Uxbridge and South Ryde turned to the Conservatives.
Does Rishi Sunak win you the election?
I think, you know, it was the Conservatives that won the election. You know, we campaigned on an issue of substance. It wasn't just ULEZ, but we campaigned on retaining our hospital, we campaigned on retaining our police station, and we campaigned on myself being a, you know, a hyper-local candidate as well.
OK, right, so final one to you now then. In terms of vote winners, that was a very vivid demonstration what happened in Uxbridge and Ruislip there, of that being a vote winner. I think it's reasonable to expect that that would play the same way across the country if the same issue came up, right? So do you think if Rishi Sunak says, well, I will scrap all ULEZ schemes right across the UK, stop them from ever coming into existence, that he would win big in places? Do you want him to do that?
Well, he's already said that he's going to champion the motorist. You know, he is looking very carefully at these 20-mile-an-hour zones, which is, you know, across Wales, he's hammering the motorists in Wales. He's also talked about, you know, curtailing local councils in their desperation to expand, you know, LTNs as well. So he's already said that he was on the side of, and will champion in motorists going forward.
He's on the side of drivers, he says. Look, thank you very much. Fantastic to have you on the show,
Good
really.
to be here.
And congratulations as well. That is the Conservatives' newest MP, Steve Tuckwell, of course, won Boris Johnson's old seat of Uxbridge and South Ruislip. Some said against the RZ knew he was going to win all the time, but there we go. Joining me now, though, is Jim Dale, who's a senior meteorologist at British. Stay where you are, you'll be on camera. Senior meteorologist at British Weather Services and friend of the show. Jim, thank you very much. Now, I'm aware that you two can't hear each other, I don't think, so I'm just going to keep it to Jim and I, actually. But, Jim, I think you might have heard what was said a little bit there, which was that he doesn't think that ULEZ was actually an environmental policy at all, and that actually, if Rishi Sunak wants to get more votes, he should scrap things like ULEZ going forward full time.
I think ULEZ is a little bit of a red herring, to be honest with you. As far as the environment is concerned, yeah, there's an element of that, but the bigger picture is climate change and net zero. ULEZ is just a very small part of that. I think that is very clear. And by the way, Steve won his seat. Congratulations, Steve. I know you can't hear me. You scraped home because you managed to reduce your majority, or the Tory majority, from roughly 8,000 to 400. I don't really call that a victory in a seat such as Uxbridge, which is right next door to where I am at the moment in High Wycombe. We've got a Conservative MP, Steve Baker, who's a climate denier, standing against Emma Reynolds, the Labour candidate. And I'd just like to say that will be a fierce fight in my particular seat.
OK, couple of things there then, Jim. Stay where you are. We were going to let you get going, but I'm going to have to get you to respond to this, I'm afraid. Steve, he says that it wasn't a particularly good victory for you. You scraped home, right? And that actually this isn't a particularly strong sign that people there care about things like getting rid of ULEZ.
Well, I completely disagree.
You know, I wasn't expected to win. All polls, all pundits, all the media was expecting me to lose, you know, by a landslide. You know, and again, I can only quote the many thousands of doors that myself and my team knocked on during the by-election campaign, and the universal anger and frustration to ULEZ was there, loud and proud.
OK, all right, thank you very much. Jim, I'm going to bring you back in now. So there you go. I mean, the fact is, Jim, look, it might be unpopular for you because I know that this is a massive, well, this is your life, isn't it? The climate, weather, meteorology, and I get that. But, you know, unfortunately, a lot of the public just aren't anywhere near as bothered about it as you are, and we are in the business of winning elections.
There was a little poll I've mentioned to this previously that came out of the local elections, which actually suggested on the returns that some nearly 70% of people were in favour of net zero and only 20% again. So, look, certain things are happening with the climate. We saw it in New York a couple of 3 days ago. We saw it in Libya. We saw it in other parts of the world at various times. We're seeing it this week. Wait until Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You're going to see.
Right, but you wouldn't have a referendum on it, though, Jim, would you? Have you changed on that, Jim? I mean, would you have a would you have a referendum on ULEZ or net zero anywhere in the country? Would you have a referendum on those two things?
I don't think ULEZ will ever come into it as far as a referendum is concerned. It's not a big enough subject, to be frank with you. And I think even if it was, I think it would be one hands down. I don't think people enjoy pollution in any shape or form. If we're talking about war against motorists, well, what about the war that's being played out by the Conservative Party against pedestrians and the poor, basically, because that's what that's about. As far as net zero is concerned, I'd be very comfortable with a referendum in terms of if it ever happened, because I think it would be one hands down. People are not stupid. They can see the climate is changing and it's being rebuffed and in reverse gear by this Conservative government.
OK, Jim, it's strong stuff. I'm going to let Steve just come back to that. Two things, right? Firstly, Jim says that if there was a referendum on ULEZ and net zero, he thinks that his side would win, right? The second thing is he said the Conservatives talk a lot about having a war on motorists, the war against motorists, sorting that out. He says, what about the war on pedestrians and the poor?
Well, the first point about a referendum on ULEZ, I ran a referendum on ULEZ and I won. So that's the first point. And in terms of pedestrians, yeah, we need to be making sure that there's good transport planning policies in place, and that we keep pedestrians and vehicles separate. But we can't just keep hammering motorists across outer London and across the country, as we've seen in London and we've seen in other parts of the country as well.
All right, well, look, thank you very, very much. I will finally now release you from that chair. You've been here long enough, I think. Probably longer here than you've actually been an MP. Steve Tutwell there, who's the Tory's newer MP. And we had Jim Dale as well. Jim, thank you very much for coming on, meteorologist, friend of the show as well, always fights his corner very, very vehemently, doesn't he? Right, so it's been reported, I believe, that the northern leg, yes, of HS2 will be scrapped. But a senior government source has now come out and said, no decision's been made yet. Who do you believe? OK, Patrick Christys here on GB News. We are Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, it's all kicked off so far here at Conservative Party Conference, hasn't it? You are watching or listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, live here in Manchester. More now on the future of HS2. About 20 minutes before my show started, I had a running order. We had it all. Best laid plans and all that, because it got ripped up when it announced, oh, hang on a minute, could we have a scrapping of a leg of HS2? A senior government source has now told GB News that no decision has been made about whether the northern leg of that railway line will be scrapped. But after a week of speculation, it's been reported, though, insiders, sources, saying that Rishi Sunak has decided to ditch the high-speed rail link between Manchester and Birmingham. A Number 10 spokesperson says those reports are inaccurate, but let me tell you, there are a heck of a lot of rumblings here at the Conservative Party Conference. I am joined by Philip Davies, who is the Tory MP for Shipley in Yorkshire, and of course a friend of this parish, and Charlie Rowley as well, who is a former special advisor to the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. Michael Gove. Right, OK, so I'll start with you, Phil. What do you think?
Well, if it's true, if these rumours are true, then I'm massively in favour of what the Prime Minister's going to do. I mean, he's the Prime Minister that is prepared to say that the Emperor's got no clothes. He did it on net zero. Everyone knew that net zero, the timetable was ridiculous. Everyone knew it. No one was prepared to say it until the Prime Minister came along and said it. Everyone now knows that HS2 is a complete white elephant, wasting a huge amount of money. The bill's probably going to be about £180 billion. It's totally unaffordable. And he's prepared to say this Emperor's got no clothes either. So I very much hope it's true. In the north, what we want is the money spent on transport infrastructure across the north. That's the bit that doesn't work. The bit that does work is going from north to south. We don't need to spend £180 billion on a railway line to London.
Your old gaffer Michael Gove had his tongue-tied a couple of days ago. He was asked about this, then again yesterday. He doesn't know. Well, shovels in the ground, shovels in the ground, shovels in the ground. There's things, no decision. Go on, what's going on?
Well, you need a bit more than shovels to get this project going. You need a bit more sort of heavyweight machinery. But look, we've got to wait and see. No decision has been made. That's obviously what Number 10 is saying today. So if there is going to be an announcement, whether it's in the PM speech on Wednesday or whether it's sometime after that at the next fiscal event, then I will. I wish I did.
I think you do.
But we've just got to wait and see. But I think, to Philip's point, he's absolutely right that on a personal level, I would like to see better connectivity between London to Birmingham to Manchester to connect our great cities. But if that's not what's needed, this project started in 2009, many years ago, and it is totally unfair to the UK taxpayer, whether you live in the north or the south, to wake up month after month to headline after headline about the ballooning costs of a project that is simply, needs better delivery. So if there is a case to say, say that HS2 in the north needs to be paused to expand east to west, to bring that delivery.
What's the point of Michael Gove if this doesn't happen?
Well, there's always a point. There's always a point to having Michael Gove.
All of this stuff. Where is it?
Well, this is part of the conversation. So the whole point of the conference is billed as taking the long-term decisions in the interests of the country, and so it might be the case that taxpayers' money is better spent on delivering projects and infrastructure to level up the country across the north, whether that's east to west. But we just have to wait and see, because I think it would be a project that many people could still support.
Can I just say, because I'm an old fart, Patrick, and so I've been in Parliament long enough since the whole thing of HS2 first started. And when the last Labour government actually, they were the ones who brought forward the idea of HS2, it was never to benefit the north. They never even said it was to benefit the north. HS2, the whole point of HS2 when it was first envisaged was actually to stop the expansion of Heathrow and to have a high-speed line from Heathrow to Leeds and Manchester, so that you could actually not have short-haul flights to Heathrow, and so you wouldn't have an extra runway at Heathrow. It was nothing. It was never. They never even pretended it was to benefit the north. There's been a huge rewriting of history. It's become like a religion for people like Andy Burnham, who's got no idea what on earth he's talking about.
The King of the North.
Well, so he claims, but he doesn't really speak for the north. He speaks for himself. And the thing is, look, just think of it in this terms. You've got £180 billion that's supposed to benefit cities like Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, Birmingham. If you were to say to all of those mayors in those areas, here's £180 billion.
Yeah, of course.
What are the chances of all four of them saying, actually, do you know what, we're all right here, everything's fine, so what we're going to do is we're going to pool all of our money and build a train line to London? If they can't think of anything better to spend that on in the north than a train line to London, they need to make way for people who can.
But you still go ahead with it?
Well, I think you've got to look at the costs, and I think look, there is a case for it because it's already underway, and I think is there going to be an additional cost to scrap the whole thing? What a total waste of money that might be. So there might be a case to just pursue the thing. I mean, I think for what it's worth, we need to get rid of whoever's mismanaged this whole project from the start and bring new people in.
I feel like more people need to be talking about that side of it. Okay, this is a monumental waste of money. When you consider that your average man and woman out there, we've probably got more people paying higher rate tax than we've had since arguably ever, I would imagine, in this country now. If someone fills in a tax return wrong, it's not long before HMRC are onto them. Well, I'm sorry, but you decide that you're going to build HS2, you could just splash billions around and no one seems to mind.
That's part of this, though, in all fairness, and I'm somebody who's been against it right from the word go, but this is the cost of democracy in many respects. I mean, this is about building massive tunnels through the Chilterns that was never envisaged at the start of the process because local opposition
to protect the southern landscape, by the way.
Exactly, absolutely. So that's a lot of the cost has been because of that, not because of anything else. I don't know.
Well, I think what's absolutely vital in the next few days or next few hours is that the communication has to be key. So if it is the case that the northern leg from Birmingham to Manchester is going to be scrapped, you have to explain why. And I think what Philip was saying is absolutely right, because that money could be better spent on projects in the north to level up this country, to deliver for communities that lent their vote to the Conservative Party in 2019, to regain their support again at the next election, which we think is next year. If you explain it in those terms, I think people that might support HS2 in its full length can get behind that. But it needs to be all about the comms now.
The reason why we're talking about it is because those comms have been scatty at the moment. Not long now. Final question: should Nigel Farage ever be allowed to rejoin the Conservative Party?
I think anybody who wants to join the Conservative Party is thinking about the right thing to do. Yes.
I would welcome Nigel Farage into the
would?
Of course I would. Yeah, he's a great politician, and and lots of people support him. Why not? He's
interesting.
He's a true Conservative.
Interesting. Well, I asked because he's here and he'll be doing a show later, and he's been making not here now. Don't worry, Charlie. He's not right here. All right. Okay. All right. Both of you, thank you very much. Lovely stuff. I've got loads more coming your way in the next hour. We are going to be continuing to talk a little bit about HS2. We're going to get to grips with the immigration issue that is facing Britain. 25,000 Channel migrants now so far this year. Should we leave the ECHR? And is it right to take benefits off people if they're work shy? Patrick Christys, GB News.
Afternoon, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a north-south split today, fairly dull, damp one in the south, something a bit brighter across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some quite heavy rain developing, though, through the evening time over central and eastern parts of England, particularly the East Midlands, up through Lincolnshire and North Norfolk. Could even see a few thunderstorms. We could see quite a lot of heavy rain for a time overnight across parts of East Anglia especially. It does all scoot away.
Clearer skies will allow temperatures to drop down to single figures in the countryside across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Further south with a lot of clouds, it'll stay pretty warm overnight. It's quite a grey start then across East Anglia and the southeast, but clouds should tend to drift away, and then it'll be a case of sunshine and showers. Most of the showers over northwest England, western Scotland, a few for Northern Ireland, sprinkling for Wales, maybe southwest England catching a shower or two, but much of the Midlands, southern and eastern England will be dry for most of the day with some sunny spells. A fresher feel though with a brisk wind, particularly gusty across northern Scotland, and coming into western Scotland, more rain through Tuesday night and into Wednesday, and that could cause some problems. The rain potentially starts to really build up later this week. Some of that rain on Wednesday affecting parts of Northern Ireland, particularly the north coast. For England and Wales, again, a few showers in the west, but many places dry and bright. Temperatures around average for the time of year. There are signs, particularly in the south, that things will warm up later this week. Bye for now.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 4 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News, and as you can tell, I'm here in Manchester at the Conservative Party conference, where, let me tell you, it's all going off. Why? Well, Nigel Farage rocked up for his first conference since the mid-80s. He's been drawing the crowds. He will join me on this show towards the end of the hour, so stay tuned for that. Jeremy Hunt and Liz Truss. It's not quite all-out warfare, but it's not that far off it. That's interesting. We're also, of course, going to be talking about HS2. I was stood over there about an hour and 10 minutes ago, and we got the noise that they were scrapping the thing. But now we're being told that's a load of rubbish. Well, what is it? I'm not sure who to believe, but we will get to the bottom of this and much, much more, as well as, of course, immigration. 25,000 small boats have crossed the channel so far this year. Patrick Christys, GB News. Yeah, look, there's absolutely loads on. I'm going to be joined by Greg Smith, Conservative MP, Christopher Hope, Nigel Farage and a few others as well. But first, it is, of course, your headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Well, the top story this hour, a government source has told GB News that no decisions have been taken on HS2, following reports that the Manchester section of the line had been axed. It follows increased speculation about the rail project's future, with a number of government ministers calling for the project to be reviewed due to spiralling costs. The Chancellor, though, says it shouldn't cost 10 times more to build a railway in the UK than just across the Channel in France. Also in the news today, a second police force is investigating allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. In a statement, Thames Valley Police said it's received new information relating to harassment and stalking allegations dating back to 2018. They added it would be inappropriate to comment on an ongoing investigation. It follows an investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4. Russell Brand denies all accusations against him. The Chancellor's announced plans to freeze the expansion of the civil service and reduce its numbers to pre-pandemic levels. During his speech at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, Jeremy Hunt said it would save the government £1 billion next year. Meanwhile, the Chancellor announced tougher benefit sanctions on those who are capable of working but choose not to, and a national living wage rise to £11 an hour.
We promised in our manifesto to raise the national living wage to 2/3 of median income, ending low pay in this country. At the moment, it's £10.42 an hour, and we're waiting for the Low Pay Commission to tell us next year's recommendation. But I confirm today, whatever that recommendation, we'll increase the national living wage to at least £11 an hour next year. That's a pay rise for 2 million workers.
Jeremy Hunt, well, the former Prime Minister Liz Truss has called on the Chancellor to cut corporation tax back to 19% in his next autumn statement. Speaking at a fringe rally, the former Prime Minister urged the Tory leadership to axe the tax, cut bills and build homes. Her comments come after Jeremy Hunt told GB News no substantial tax cuts are possible this year. Ms Truss said businesses are now choosing not to locate in the UK and they shouldn't be treated like a cash cow to be milked.
We need to unleash business across Britain. We need people to want to invest in our country. We need businesses to be able to expand, to grow, to create new jobs, to create new ideas. That's why I'm calling upon the Chancellor at the autumn statement to put corporation tax back down to 19%. And frankly, if we can get it lower, the better.
Let's bring you some news from the United States now, where the former President Donald Trump has arrived at a court in New York. He's due to stand trial in a civil fraud case. A warning for viewers, the following contains some flashing imagery if you're watching on television. The former president accused of inflating the value of his assets by billions of dollars to secure preferential loan and insurance terms. Speaking outside the courtroom, Mr. Trump claimed he was the victim.
It was never a problem. Everything was perfect. There was no crime. The crime is against me because we have a corrupt district attorney, but we have a corrupt attorney general, and it all comes down from the DOJ that totally coordinated this in Washington because I'm the leading candidate, I'm leading Biden by 10 points.
Donald Trump speaking there. Now, here in the UK, using mobile phones in schools should be banned, according to the Education Secretary. Gillian Keegan says the move would improve the overall behaviour and education of state school students and cut down on online bullying. New guidance from the Department for Education will back head teachers in banning them throughout the school day, including at break times. Junior doctors and consultants in England have begun a 3-day walkout. That's the longest ever period of joint strike action. Until Thursday at 7 a.m, they'll deliver what's being described as Christmas Day levels of staffing. Their last joint strike in September led to almost 130,000 appointments having to be rescheduled. The government says the walkout is doing a massive disservice to patients. But these doctors told us why they've gone on strike.
Until and unless there is a credible pay offer, it will mean that doctors of all grades, but especially senior doctors, will continue to leave the country for other places, and the NHS will continue to suffer.
We are not planning for the future. There is going to be no staffing in the NHS. There's going to be no NHS in the future if we don't fight for our pay. But this isn't really necessarily a fight about individual consultant pay per se. We're actually fighting for the very future of the NHS.
That's the latest news headlines. You're with GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Well, there is only one place to start, and that, of course, is the future of HS2. But yes, there's loads more on the agenda as well. We're going to be getting stuck into immigration. We're going to be having a talk, of course, as well, aren't we, about net zero. There's a heck of a lot on the agenda here. And fundamentally, whether or not Rishi Sunak can actually win the next general election, there is a sense, not just here because we're at a Conservative Party conference, but amongst the polling as well, that, you know what, things are getting a bit closer than they were, and things are getting closer than people thought they might do. But a senior government source has told GB News now that no decision has been made about whether the northern leg of HS2 should be scrapped. After a week of speculation, it's been reported that Rishi Sunak, though, has decided to ditch the high-speed rail link between Manchester and Birmingham. A very confusing picture taking place, certainly mixed messages. But I am joined initially by our political editor, Christopher Hope. Christopher, thank you very much. It's great to have you on. What's the political roundup before we go to, of course...
Well, where we are right now, the government says on my last WhatsApp from them was saying these reports are incorrect. No final decisions have been taken on phase 2 of HS2. That is not what we're hearing in the hall here. We are hearing from lots of sources in government saying that they have decided not to go ahead with this link between Manchester and Birmingham. That is denied. They're saying, well, there's a non-denial saying that no decisions have been made. The reports are inaccurate, not saying what that means. There are reports here right now that around 10 billion might be freed up by not going ahead with the HS2 link between Manchester and Birmingham to be spent on other northern rail projects in the north of England. That's what we think may come. It does fit rather with this idea, long-term decision for a brighter future. This is what the PM is talking about at the moment, being brave and making big calls, even though they might be unpopular, particularly in Manchester.
OK, well, yes, and I think where we are now is actually quite totemic, really, isn't it? Look, I'm just going to play a little clip, because yesterday, Michael Gove, Levelling Up, Michael Gove was asked by Camilla Tominey, right here in this studio, whether or not the northern leg of HS2 would be scrapped. And it's fair to say he did not give a definitive answer.
I agree that we've been too London-centric in the past, and that's why we have a long-term plan for levelling up with lots of different ingredients.
So you must think that HS2 should go to Manchester then?
Well, I think levelling up involves doing many more things.
Give us your position on that. Should it go to Manchester?
Well, I think we need to make sure that we're getting absolute value for money from it.
Come on, you must be able to have an opinion on whether it should go to Manchester or not.
I absolutely think the most important thing is making sure that when we level up, we take into account all of the things that we need to do. So we've shifted Arts Council funding.
I know, but should it go to Manchester,
research
yes
and
or
development
no?
funding. Well, we're going to have to...
Should it? Not will it?
We're going to have to look at every conceivable pound that we spend on transport in order to make sure that we get value for money from it.
Still not an answer to the question whether you think it should go to Manchester. All right.
Well, I'm joined now by Greg Smith, who's the MP for Buckingham and is also a member of the Transport Select Committee. Greg, what's going on?
Look, I really hope that the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, make the right decision and scrap HS2, not just the bit north of Birmingham, but the whole thing. I've got 19 miles of it being built through my constituency, and actually working with a Labour peer, Tony Barclay, he's worked out that we can get the overall loss down to still an eye-watering amount of money, but down to £8 billion. And my argument is it better to put our hands up, admit the mistake that HS2 should never have been given the green light in the first place and lose that £8 billion than spend more money after bad? Another 100 billion, another 150 billion. Where will this project end?
Why do you hate it so much?
I don't think we can afford it as a nation. I don't think it's what anyone is crying out for in the country, the ability to get to Birmingham or Manchester 20 minutes faster. When I talk to my constituents, when I talk to people with my select committee hat on, they want a regular commuter service to the nearest town or the city to where they are, be that in the north or the Midlands or the south. They want to be able to get a seat on it. They want Wi-Fi or a mobile signal that will work on it so that they can do some work. They'd quite like a toilet that doesn't resemble the facilities tent at Glastonbury.
Yep.
They don't have this great clamour to get somewhere
but it's gone,
a handful of minutes faster.
It's gone on so long now, hasn't it, that even if you pulled the plug on it, people would say it's a catastrophic waste of money. Chopper, you're
well, it's meant to be about capacity, wasn't it, Greg? It's meant to basically have a new line between point to point, London to Birmingham to Manchester, and then free up the West Coast main line to be a stopping service.
Yeah, the capacity argument crept in after, and only after, the argument about speed was lost. And I'm sure, absolutely confident, that everyone that is a proponent of HS2 will come up with yet another reason why we should go ahead with it. But there's a reality. We've got £400 billion worth of COVID debt. We cannot afford it.
Yeah, OK, look, we are where we are with HS2 in the future. Massively mixed messaging here. You know, initially we were told, right, OK, that's it, it's been scrapped, Now a big rollback. I get the point that you've made. The other point, of course, is, well, look, it would be a waste of money. It's a shame it's ever got to this. How have we ended up here? But whilst I've got you, I wanted to chat about a couple of the other big topics that I think are doing the rounds at conference as well. The ECHR is a big one, OK? So whether or not we should be out of the ECHR, whether or not we should be staying in it, what it would mean for Britain's reputation on the world stage if we pulled out of the ECHR. Where are you on that?
So, look, we've got a problem. We've passed two major bits of legislation in my time as an MP, only since 2019, to try and combat illegal immigration, the smuggling of people across the English Channel by the people traffickers, the people that really are the villains and the criminals in this, bringing people in very dangerous conditions across the Channel. Yet it's still caught up in the courts. We still can't actually get on with the Rwanda partnership. We can't get on with a lot of the provisions in this legislation. And when the courts and the legal system are the blocker, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is absolutely right to challenge, do we need to be in the ECHR, or do we need to disapply the bits of it that are stopping us protecting our own borders from illegal immigration?
OK, look, earlier on I went out and about and just spoke to a few people, specifically actually some younger members of the Conservative Party who are here, to get their views on how they felt about pulling out of the ECHR. Here's what they had to say.
I think that it would be the wise thing to do for this country, because a massive part of us leaving the European Union is to take back control of our ability to dictate who gets into the country on our terms. And I think the last major hurdle to that is the ECHR and the authority of the courts in Strasbourg and in Europe.
I don't think the ECHR itself is the problem. The problem, I think, is the way it's translated into British law, such as the Human Rights Act, the Equality Act. I think it just needs to be reformed and looked at again. The Conservatives need to come and look at it again, and then perhaps legislate it more properly in a more modern way so that it doesn't interfere with their agenda.
We need to be able to take back control of all our laws, and one thing that the ECHR is stopping us doing is sorting out the boats issue, and we need to sort that out. So we should put our country first and say, no, we should leave the ECHR.
Yeah, OK. I mean, again, not a massively diverse school of thought there, but I suppose that is what you get at a Conservative Party conference when it comes to the ECHR, so I will say that. I did try and mix it up a little bit, but there we go. So people basically agreeing with you there. What would you say to people that goes, if we pull out the ECHR, it makes us like Russia and Belarus, we would no longer be able to talk to people on the world stage about human rights, we would lose credibility?
Well, the same people were saying that about Brexit, that if we left the European Union, we'd lose credibility on the world stage. People were saying that about all sorts of things in the past. I'd actually say the rest of the world, looking at the United Kingdom, saying, what, you can't even protect your own borders? I'd say that makes us a bigger laughing stock across the whole world. We just need to take whatever action is necessary, be that a notwithstanding clause like Bill Cash suggested in the earlier legislation, or full withdrawal. It is right that we look at these things.
I mean, we've got 25,000 people who've crossed the Channel so far this year. I think 380 were intercepted today alone. It is becoming an increasing issue, £8 and a bit million a day on hotels. You know, it's undeniably going to be huge at the doorstep. Christopher, how big an issue is this in the Conservative Party in terms of the divide, then, about the ECHR? And how do you see it going? I mean, Priti Patel last night was saying, and previously, was saying, no, she wants kind of reform of the ECHR. But then we've actually got a Home Secretary now who, I think if she was really strapped to a lie detector test, I don't want to speak for her, but it's pretty obvious. I don't think she likes the ECHR. So where is the Tory party?
Well, where we are right now is, officially, it's on the table. That's withdrawal from the ECHR. If you read the Sunday papers like I have to yesterday, that language is used by Kevin Badenoch, Michael Gove and Suella Braverman on the table. That is a line that Number 10 have given them, i.e. it is up for grabs right now. It's a live debate for Greg on his WhatsApps, which you can read out to us if you want to, on your WhatsApps, and also within the party. They are keen to, they want to have this debate. Again, it was mooted by David Cameron in 2010. Theresa May told us in 2017 to be out by 2020. It's out there as an idea. It's the next stage of the Brexit idea of sovereignty, giving sovereignty back to the Supreme Court, and you can't have this row with Strasbourg.
Look, you mentioned WhatsApps there. You are world famous for the quality of your WhatsApps. Okay, now I want to ask you, because the topic that we're going on about next is about tax. It's about Liz Truss versus Jeremy Hunt. What's been said to you? We're going to play a clip of Liz Truss shortly, but what's been said to you, the whispers in your phone at this conference?
What has happened here with the Liz Truss intervention today? She's a former leader, of course, former Prime Minister this time last year. Normally, Liz Truss is not around the conference for a long period. They go and write a memoir, they do charity work, witness David Cameron, even Boris Johnson, he's not here, Theresa May. Instead, she's back here. I remember met her in a bar just before I got here. She's very jolly and she's surrounded by people, and she had a really big thing to say about tax.
Okay, yeah, I think we've got a Liz Truss clip that we can play to you right now, which is her talking, shock horror, about tax.
So let's start with axing the tax. We need to unleash business across Britain. We need people to want to invest in our country. We need businesses to be able to expand, to grow, to create new jobs, to create new ideas. That's why I'm calling upon the Chancellor at the autumn statement to put corporation tax back down to 19%. And frankly, if we can get it lower, the better.
Greg, got to put you on the spot. Was she right all along?
Look, I'm a low-tax Conservative. I want to see the tax burden fall. I've signed the pledge that many Conservative MPs have signed over the weekend to say we cannot let the tax burden increase.
Can I just interrupt at that point? Because I actually think that is a really vital point, and I don't think it necessarily got as much coverage as maybe it could have done. So what is that? What, 50 MPs?
It's a very simple pledge that says nobody's proud that we've got a 75-year high in the tax burden in the United Kingdom. We cannot possibly comprehend increasing that further. I'd actually say that's quite a moderate pledge. That's not rocket science. That's not some big poster board pledge for ahead of the next election. It's a very modest, look, we can't let the tax burden increase. There are still the challenges around inflation. There is still the whopping challenge of paying off the $400 billion that the Treasury borrowed to pay for furlough and the business grants and everything through the pandemic. But ideally, we need a lower tax economy, certainly to get businesses investing and growing.
Are you saying, Greg, there that if the budget came along which would increase the tax burden, you would vote it down?
That's the pledge.
And yes or no, you would?
Yes.
It's a big deal. And that shows the importance of dealing with tax in this party. It's gone up from 31% of GDP to 34%, but it's a big increase.
It's a massive increase, and I don't think anybody in the Conservative Party wants to see the tax burden at that sort of high, that share of GDP. There are other challenges around inflation, around paying off national debt. But actually, what I think most of us understand and want to see is that the way that you challenge that, the way that you get more money into the Treasury coffers, is through reducing the tax burden.
Do you think Liz Truss helps your case? Because she also signed the letter you signed. She signed the same pledge. Is talking that way over there in the Midland Hotel helpful to Rishi Sunak here?
So I think conferences are about a debate. They're maybe not a bigger debating arena as they once were, certainly not compared to other parties, actually. But if we can't have this discussion, If we can't, as backbench members of Parliament, as the party membership that are here, many hard-working councillors and MSPs and members of the Welsh Assembly and everybody else elected to all manner of office in this country, can't have their say, can't put that view forward, that's a problem.
Isn't it the case that she's more in touch with the grassroots than your PM is? Because they voted for her, they didn't vote for Rishi Sunak.
Look, that's a statement of fact, Chris. That happened last summer. Rishi is the Prime Minister now, and I think we do have to stick with Rishi, we do have to get behind him, but we need to have that policy debate that moves things forward. Rishi has taken a massive step forward in terms of the net zero agenda, on the plan for motorists. Now we need to get that hat trick completed and actually start to tackle this 75-year high in the tax burden.
Right, I'm going to ring the bell here, chaps. So thank you very much. It's a cracking way to kickstart this particular hour. You get loads more of this story on our website. It's Greg Smith, their MP for Buckingham, and our very own as well, Christopher Hope, our political editor, who got stuck in a bit there, didn't he? More on this on our website. GBNews.com is the fastest growing national news website in the country. It's got the best analysis, big opinion, all the latest breaking news. But earlier than scheduled, Nigel Farage is at the Tory party conference for the first time since the mid-80s, and he's going to be live on GB News, on this show, in the chair that Greg Smith has warmed up for him in just a couple of minutes' time. So stay tuned, because Nigel will be joining me in just a tick. I'll see you soon.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's me, Patrick Christys, right here at Conservative Party conference in Manchester, my old stomping ground for what it's worth. Now, one of Rishi Sunak's famous 5 pledges is to stop the boats. So it's perhaps unfortunate for the Prime Minister that we've reached a landmark today. Yes, GBNews can reveal 25,000 migrants have crossed the Channel in small boats this year. The big noise at this conference is about stopping the boats. It's about getting out the ECHR. It's about tax. It's about HS2. But the biggest noise of all is sitting right next to me now. It's GBNews presenter. It is, of course, Nigel Farage. At your first conference since the mid-80s.
I know, late 80s, I think. Yeah. Well, I'm here with GB News, but I'm also here because a lot of the things that I've campaigned about and spoken about for nearly 20 years are now being picked up by some Conservatives. What Suella Braverman said in her speech to the UN, I've been saying that for years and getting abused, so at least some of it's leaching into the mainstream, albeit, I suspect, she's still a minority in her own party. But Patrick, you put your finger on it. The elephant in the room here is immigration. And this is not just stopping the boats, it's legal net migration. It is the massive population rise that's going on. And I've been out here for the last 5 or 6 hours talking to party members and MPs and others, and they all know that exploding population means a housing crisis. You can't get a GP appointment, the roads are more blocked than ever, and nobody on that stage even wants to talk about it. Oh, too scared, too scared.
Of what? Of winning an election?
Oh, being called nasty things by their mates in central London. You know, and the Times editorial might be nasty to them. The Guardian might be beastly. The BBC might be even worse than they could be. Never underestimate the cowardice of people in elected politics and the desire to be part of a herd and the feeling that being in a herd gives you protection.
Well, you know, I would have thought, just having walked around here, talking to ordinary people, Conservative Party members, for goodness sake, I mean, they know what Conservative Party members by and large want, and they do want controls to legal immigration, and they want to stop the boats. And yet they're scared, do you think, to go on stage and say that?
They've been scared for years.
To an audience full of people who would stand up and applaud.
Yeah, but it is the social unacceptability of saying these things. And what's really interesting, in 13 years of Conservative government, the centre of gravity on these debates has shifted so far to the left, it's almost unbelievable. I mean, there were things that David Blunkett was saying as Home Secretary 20 years ago that would now be called with the BBC far right.
Yeah.
That is how far to the left we've gone. But it also reflects that the type of people in politics. Most of the MPs here are literally career politicians. It'll be the same next week at the Labour conference. They're in it for a career, not for the change they can bring or the conviction that they hold. And so the disconnect between the party and the active membership is huge.
Well, and we saw that, didn't we? Lord Cruddas last night came out and gave a barnstorming speech straight off the trap, teeing off, where he openly said that people should not be donating to the Conservative Party. They should be donating to the CDO, to, you know, a membership grassroots organisation. That appears to be open warfare within the Conservative Party between, dare I say it, people who maybe are more closely politically aligned to you and, well, people in charge.
Oh, look, it's open warfare here. It's open warfare on HS2, it's open warfare on net zero, it's open warfare on migration, it's open warfare on Brexit. That hasn't gone away. And what we need to do with Brexit. It's open warfare on every single issue you can see, differing wings of the party. You know, Liz Truss's group this morning with their Trumpian-type slogans, the One Nation lot with Damien Green and the others, they're horribly split. But even those of a more conservative perspective, perfectly clear, Suella and Prissy don't like each other very much. No. They're all over the place.
Right, now look, I heard you being interviewed earlier just in front of this stand. And I think they were asking you some questions. Are you coming back into politics or all of that stuff? But what you said was, just listen to me. Just listen to me. So, if Rishi Sunak is watching this now, then win him the election.
Oh, it can be done. It can be won. I mean, honestly, nobody outside the Conservative Party made a bigger contribution towards their 80-seat majority than I did. And I say that not wanting to appear big-headed or arrogant. I turned the Conservative Party from an anti-leave the EU to a pro-Brexit party. They may not have meant it, but that's what they said. I shifted that party almost single-handedly to a position that gave them an 80-seat majority. I've got a better sense of where the centre ground majority public opinion is than virtually everybody, Rishi, in your party. So I know you're listening to me now, or beginning to, on net zero and other issues, but you've got to go one hell of a lot further than you've gone. You've got to convince people in your speech on Wednesday that you are the real deal, not just making reactive moves in response to opinion polls. It's a heck of a big ask. Can it be done? Well, stranger things have happened in history.
Do you think you will ever rejoin the Conservative Party?
I can't see it, Patrick. I think they're gone.
I think they'd have you now, I think.
Oh, if you ask this lot, you know, the delegates, who they'd vote for, I could become leader. But I'm not sure my leadership would ever let me in.
No, I mean, it would be fascinating. I mean, just from a journalistic point of view, it would be a fascinating thing to watch unfold. I mean, it would be tremendous.
But the middle upper class, white, overprivileged snobs who've never had a proper job in their lives would never want me in the party.
Do you think we've got a bigger disconnect than ever, Nigel, between the way that GBNews looks at the world potentially, and the way that, you know, Twitter, you mentioned some snobs there, you know, potentially other media outlets. A little bit later on in the show, I've got a clip from Priti Patel, I've also got a clip from Liz Truss talking about GBNews. You know, you talk about the disconnect between maybe the grassroots of the party and the Conservative Party, but what about the disconnect between, you know, us and maybe the media?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, what you've seen over last week, I was away last week, very good week to be away from GBNews, whilst all the trouble was kicking off. But I mean, the Adam Boltons, we must be shut down. The Today programme, interviewing our chief executive as if it was Nuremberg.
Yeah.
I mean, the way the whole thing's been dealt with has been unbelievable. And I've been here before. When UKIP was rising and challenging, we were demonised, we should be defunded, closed down, put in prison, God knows what. And the same's happening to GB News. What you'll notice here is the love for GB News amongst so many of these delegates and members of Parliament and former cabinet ministers that are here. So I think we are now a very established media brand, especially with this group of people. You know what? It's not a bad thing.
No, absolutely. Just very quickly, very finally, Nigel, you're doing a show here. What's on?
Well, sadly, at 7 o'clock, the punters will all have gone. It's going to be me in an empty hall, which will look terrible. And the Guardian will say no one turned up, but never mind. We're going to have Lord Frost on, just to talk about the state of the party. We're going to have Miriam Cates on. To talk about what's going on in our schools. And I will give my take on what I've seen over the last 48 hours here. I can't believe this party has ever been more divided than ever before. They're headed for defeat, but the real debate and battle that's going on here is what comes next.
What comes next? It's interesting you say they're headed for defeat, because I'm going to be having a little conversation later on. I don't disagree with you at all about how divided this party is. I think it's a depressing thing for British politics in general that they are not necessarily heading for defeat, because what does that say about the alternative?
Well, you're right. I mean, you know, many would say that Labour aren't very inspiring, but it's still going to be defeat.
Yeah. No, okay, fair enough, Nigel. Thank you very much. Watch out for a show later. Still loads more to come between now and 5. We'll hear from Jeremy Hunt. Yes, that's right, the Chancellor. It's fair to say that he and Liz Truss are not singing off the same hymn sheet on this Tory party conference, and I'll have loads more coming your way as well. Polly Middlehurst now there with your headlines.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour. A government source has told GB News that no decisions have been taken on HS2, following reports that the Manchester section of the line had been axed. It follows increased speculation about the rail project's future, with a number of government ministers calling for the project to be reviewed due to spiralling costs. The Chancellor says it shouldn't cost 10 times more to build a railway within the UK than it did to get just across the Channel to France. And Liz Truss has called on the Chancellor to cut corporation tax back to 19% in his autumn statement. Speaking at a fringe rally today in Manchester, the former Prime Minister urged the Tory leadership to axe the tax, cut bills and build homes. And lastly, a second police force is investigating allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. In a statement, Thames Valley Police said it's received new information relating to harassment and stalking allegations dating back to 2018. It follows a joint investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4. Russell Brand denies all accusations of criminality. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
Right, well, a little earlier this hour, we heard from Liz Truss, didn't we? She called for tax cuts at a conference fringe event this lunchtime. Now, this is very important. We have more people in this country paying high rate tax than pretty much ever, I think. So tax cuts, therefore, would affect more people than ever. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, though, failed to clearly address the topic, classic, during his keynote speech at the conference, oh, sorry, I should say Conservative Party conference. He says that he's focused on the government's target to halve inflation by the end of 2023. Keep your eyes open long enough to watch and listen to this.
We Conservatives know if you get the economy right, everything else comes right too. So right now we're focused on bringing down inflation. Nothing hurts families more when it comes to the weekly shop, heating bills or pump prices, which is why the Prime Minister's pledged to halve it.
Jeremy from Accounts there. Now, just moments before I came on air, Liz Truss herself walked up to me just off this stage and said, Patrick, love the show. I said, thanks very much, Liz. She then went on to say, tax. I said, yes. She said, cut it, cut it, cut it. And with me now is Mark Littlewood, Director General at the Institute of Economic Affairs. And after that, we're going to be joined by Justin Urquhart-Stewart, who's co-founder of Regionally. Mark, I'll start with you. Look, to be fair, Liz had a go. To be fair, you had a go. And it imploded. So why is she right now?
Oh, she was right then. I mean, the overall issue is the tax burden, Patrick, is just way, way, way too high. It's now at the highest level since the Second World War. Right. You wouldn't believe there'd been 13 years of Conservative government. Now, in order to cut taxes, you've got to make some bold decisions on spending as well, because spending's gone through the roof as well. So if you want to get taxes down, you've got to be serious about getting spending down. I slightly fear that this government is going to do neither. Spending sets the sort of limit, and then you tax to the match to pay for it.
But look, if you've got people watching this now, which we will have, all over the UK, all right, in places like Stoke or wherever, why should they be bothered about things like tax cuts? Is that not just a rich person's thing? No offence to anyone in Stoke, by the way. I appreciate there is some wealth there.
No, absolutely not. I think the most important thing is to cut taxes for ordinary families. Absolutely ridiculous. More and more people are being dragged into paying income tax. You don't have to be that rich now before you're paying the top rate of the 40p rate.
Some nurses do.
Yeah, it's absolutely unbelievable. That was initially designed to be for the super rich. It's now $50,000 a year. Not a bad salary, I grant you, but not an easy salary to bring up a family of 4 on, right?
No.
So we've got to get the overall tax burden down. I don't think you need to target this at the super billionaires, but actually if you target corporation tax as well, which Liz Truss has argued should go back down to 19%. I think there's good evidence that would pay for itself, that a lower rate would encourage more business, more investment, and in fact, you'll still have as much going into the Treasury.
What I'll do is I'll bring in Justin Urquhart-Stewart now, who's co-founder of Regionally, regular on the show, regular on the channel, and we'll just get his take on it, and then I'll put some of that to you, Mark. Justin, yeah, great to have you on the show. Thank you. Look, do we just have a socialist government pretending to be conservative that's taxing us all to the hilt and they're not doing anything about it?
Well, it is astonishing, isn't it? As Mark was saying, it's not just the amount of tax, it's the sheer complication we've got. Tolly's Tax Guide, which is the book that accountants take to bed with them for some sort of excitement in the evening, I think has doubled in size over the past 12 years. So, A, it's just too complicated, and B, it's not creative taxation. One of the key elements where you really can get more bang for your buck is actually by creating more or using the incentives, things like enterprise investment scheme. Make those regional as well. We are very good at setting up small businesses. We're absolutely rubbish at financing them to make them grow into something more significant and which become profitable and then pay more tax, which then employs more people and they pay more tax. So those are the areas where you're going to get proper growth. And what I can't see at the moment is that real incentive to encourage greater productivity, to get investment money coming in, not just domestically, but overseas as well. There's no shortage of money. I don't mean the money tree, which went the same way as the Hadrian's Wall sycamore. That's just printing the stuff. But real using pension money, redirected, not by dogma, but because they actually kind of a mechanism to do so, into good British businesses. You get most fund managers at the moment, they do great asset allocation around the world. How many it goes into British companies? They probably don't know.
OK, I'll bring in Mark again. Is Jeremy Hunt useless?
I don't think he's useless. I think he's a well-intentioned person. I just think he's looking at this problem down the wrong end of the telescope.
Why, though? Why? Is it because, dare I say it, he's never worked a day in his life in banking?
Well, I'm not necessarily sure that people who've worked in banking is the automatic qualification to be the Chancellor of the Exchequer. I just think he just sees the world in a different way. And unfortunately, what this government is seeing is that the amount of spending is fixed. This all has to go up. Spending has to go up and up and up, and then we need to raise taxes to match it. So I haven't heard Jeremy Hunt or Rishi Sunak come up with an imaginative plan for cutting spending, apart from the completely blindingly obvious that we should cancel HS2. But that's it.
Yeah.
We need to get the welfare bill down seriously. I mean, Jeremy Hunt said one or two things about trying to get people back into work. I approve of that.
He said a bit about the public sector as well and about civil servants. But again, that's not going to shift an economy, right?
No, it's not going to shift an economy.
That's a little bit of saving money from hiring 60,000 too many people during a pandemic. That doesn't sort your economy out.
No, it doesn't. That's the problem I've got. It's all fiddling at the edges. And actually, we've got to attempt to get the tax burden down radically. We are now not far off. 50p in every pound being spent in Britain is spent by the government.
Yes.
50p in every pound. This is crazy.
This is the real thing, and you've hit on exactly the right note that I want to strike. And Justin, if you're still there, I'll bring you back up. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, co-founder of Regionally. The big problem that I have, and I think the big problem that people of Manchester have, dare I say it, around the UK, is you hear that figure there. Almost half of your money goes in tax. For what? We don't have rural bus services. The NHS is absolutely knackered. If you send your kids to school, you'll be lucky to get a school place, and when they're there, they might just be indoctrinated with a load of stuff you don't want them to hear anyway. What are we paying for?
Well, this is a ridiculous thing. We had this thing, you were talking about it earlier, more people paying high rate tax. Of course, it's not high rate tax, it's normal. This was fiscal drag, and I don't mean cross-dressing accountants. This is actually getting, more poorer people into higher rate tax. Now, what we do know is, with the Laffer curve, is actually if you do bring tax down a bit to a reasonable level, you actually get more income, because people actually spend less time trying to actually salt their money away into places they're going to tax by. So make tax creative. So it's encouraging people to invest, put money in, and okay, they like paying tax, but you're in a position where actually it seemed to be doing something. At the moment, I'm just throwing money into a black hole, in the case of HS2, a very long black hole, and with no benefit to it at all. By the way, I noticed today that Indonesia has just finished 300 miles of high-speed track, slightly over cost, but managed to be able to do that pretty effectively for a third world nation.
No, absolutely. Justin, thank you very much. Down the line there, Justin Urquhart-Stewart, co-founder of Regionally, and as well, Mark Littlewood, Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Mark, just quickly while I've got you, do you think there's any chance that Sunak wins the next election?
There's always a chance. Politics is so unpredictable. Go back to the last election. The Labour Party was apparently destroyed, got its worst result in the 1930s. Now, apparently, is certain to be the next government. But I think it's a thin chance. Most likely, the Conservatives are in opposition.
Yeah, well,
overwhelmingly likely.
Interesting. And actually, as well, the talk of a hung parliament, if people are of a Conservative mind, that could end up being worse for them because there could be some kind of coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and who knows what that would be.
And the Conservatives won't find any allies in a hung parliament.
They're not going to. No, Mark, look, thank you very much. Always a pleasure. Take care. Mark Littlewood there, Director General of the Institute for Economic Affairs, and of course we had Justin on just before that as well. So far in conference, what we've had is essentially warfare between Liz Truss and Jeremy Hunt. We've had someone telling us that HS2 has been scrapped, then somebody telling us that that's a load of rubbish. We've got some people saying that we should get out the ECHR, some people saying no, we should stay into it. Some people saying we need to defund the Conservative Party, other people saying no, that's mad. And then also some people saying, please, Nigel Farage, come into us and save us. And other people saying, no, keep him well out of the party. He doesn't belong here. So it's been a quiet day. Yes, that's right, but it's only going to step up another notch because Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has announced a benefits crackdown on people who aren't trying to get a job. Is this an attack on the work shy, or are the Tories the nasty party again? Patrick Christys, GBNews, it's Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
And Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are back at it here in Manchester at the Conservative Party conference. It is 47 minutes past 4. You're watching or listening to me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, coming to you live from Manchester. At 5, I will have the latest on the future of HS2. This is kicked right off. We have an impeccable source telling us that it has been scrapped, OK? But then the government comes out, a Number 10 spokesperson says this is inaccurate. Interesting. Who do you believe? I think I know who my money's on. But now, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has announced a benefits crackdown. He says that the government wants to make it easier to sanction benefits claimants who don't do enough work. OK, is it time to get tough on the work shy?
From last year, for the first time ever, you can earn £1,000 a month without paying a penny of tax or national insurance. But despite that, even when companies are struggling to find workers, around 100,000 people are leaving the labour market every year for a life on benefits. Mel Stride gets this 100%, which is why he's replacing the work capability assessment. And we're going to look at the way the sanctions regime works. It isn't fair that someone who refuses to look seriously for a job gets the same as someone trying their best.
Well, here we are in Manchester, Northern Town, Red Wall area, and we have got a Conservative Chancellor standing up on stage and saying we've got too many people on benefits. It's too easy for too many people to be on benefits. They are draining the pockets of hard-working individuals. He stopped short of saying this, but the implication, of course, is that there are too many lazy, work-shy layabouts knocking about in this country, and they need a rocket up the backside. Former Labour MP Dennis McShane joins me now. Dennis, thank you very much. Do you agree with the Chancellor there? We need to get people back into work and get them off the couch. I think I think we might have just lost your audio connection there, Dennis, so we'll really just try to get that back. But what do you make of that at home? gbviews@gbnews.com. Interesting from the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt there. He's not said a huge amount of things that are deeply popular with everybody here. I think people see him as being a safe pair of hands, don't they? Whether or not he scraps HS2, that will be interesting. But this is something that I think could play relatively well with Conservative Party voters. Is it too easy, in your view, for people to sack off a lower paid job and decide that they want to spend their life on benefits? How do we sort that out, though? Because I think the Conservatives have got a problem here. Going into a general election a week away, this time next week, I will be at the Labour Party conference. And can you imagine if the Conservative Party policy before then is we are going to cut benefits? So how do you do that? How on earth do you sell that to the nation without again becoming the nasty party, without again seeming like you're going to plunge people into a life of poverty, people with disabilities, for example? How are they going to actually handle all of that? This Conservative Party has been very weak on several issues, hasn't it? It's been very weak when it comes to immigration, talking tough, not necessarily putting in the required action to stop the boats or cut legal migration. They've been very weak, many people would argue, when it comes to net zero, until recently, when Rishi Sunak, by the way, did not stop the big net zero agenda entirely. He just delayed it a little bit. So do you really think that the Conservative Party have got the bottle to cut people's benefits, to make it more difficult for benefit scroungers to live a life like that? I believe we are now rejoined by somebody who is a rejoiner, actually. It's Dennis McShane. Dennis, thank you very much. Look, OK, on this, is it too easy to be lazy in Britain? Come on.
I have no idea. I've worked hard all my life. What I do know is that we have a labour market that really doesn't work. And I read all this yesterday, headlines in all the Sunday papers, Hunt's going to crack down on disability benefits. Then I listened to the speech, and he's giving it to some junior minister we've never heard of to carry out a review that may report next year or the year after that. Oh, wait a minute, we won't be in power then. I mean, it's just not serious politics, Patrick, is it? It's a joke. It's like he said, the other big headline was, I'm going to cut civil service jobs. I'm going to freeze civil service jobs. Rishi Sunak announced last November, a bit under a year ago, I'm going to cut 91,000 civil service jobs. If you go back through the years, I'm going back to 2009, where a Labour government said it was going to freeze all civil service jobs. But the blob keeps getting bigger and bigger because people want more police, they want more nurses.
Dennis, you've worked very hard in your life and in your career to get to where you got to, etc. I mean, unfortunately for you, it's culminated here now talking to me, but you can't have it all. You know, why should people be able to do absolutely naff all day in, day out and know that you and I are going to pay for them?
The way they do it in other countries is it's sorted out in the workplace. The guys who know the grifters are fellow workers, works councils, joint management, trade union bodies who simply say, hey, you can't be doing that. And that's the way we do it. We have this insane system in which one man, Jeremy Hunt today, somebody else tomorrow, sits in Whitehall and decides everything for 67 million people. This is our problem. We're over-centralised and under-managed. And I've got no problems at all. You won't find a single trade unionist of my acquaintance over many, many decades who supports any workplace benefit fiddle, losing on disabled benefit. Be very careful, because when you hand it over to the local bureaucrats, not the people in the workplace, they'll start cutting benefits of someone who's got a real disability. Then you're in the front page of the papers, and then Jeremy Hunt and whoever is the minister gets it in the net.
All right, Dennis, look, I've got to ask you, because I've been asking basically every politician, or in your case, former politician that I've had on this show. Nigel Farage is here at the moment. I was at a do last night where it was a massive Nigel Farage love-in with some very senior members of the Conservative Party. He's making noises about whether or not he's going to get back into politics. Do you think that the Conservatives should have Nigel Farage in their party?
Oh, I would love it, because he would keep him out of power forever. I love Nigel. You work with him. We've always got on personally very well. He was very kind with me a few years ago when I was in real trouble. He actually stepped up to the plate, and never mind what he said. But, you know, I like Nigel a lot. The plain fact is, he's tried, I think, 7 times to be elected to Parliament. BBC bigged him up, boosted him, put him on QT.
All right, Dennis, I tell you what, we're just going to knock it on the head there, I'm afraid, because to be honest with you, I can't hear you. As Dennis McShane there, the former Labour MP, I hope that was much better for everybody at home than it was for me. As Labour spokesperson for Number 10 said that reports that the northern leg of HS2 has been scrapped are inaccurate. Well, OK, I'll believe that when I see it, because when I come back, I am going to be speaking to the woman who was told directly that HS2 has been scrapped. So we're going to blow the lid off the thing. Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Afternoon, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a north-south split today, fairly dull, damp one in the south, something a bit brighter across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some quite heavy rain developing, though, through the evening time over central and eastern parts of England, particularly the East Midlands, up through Lincolnshire and North Norfolk. Could even see a few thunderstorms. We could see quite a lot of heavy rain for a time overnight across parts of East Anglia especially. It does all scoot away. Clearer skies will allow temperatures to drop down to single figures in the countryside across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Further south with a lot of clouds, it'll stay pretty warm overnight. It's quite a grey start then across East Anglia and the southeast, but clouds should tend to drift away, and then it'll be a case of sunshine and showers. Most of the showers over northwest England, western Scotland, a few for Northern Ireland, sprinkling for Wales, maybe southwest England catching a shower or two, but much of the Midlands, southern and eastern England will be dry for most of the day with some sunny spells. A fresher feel, though, with a brisk wind, particularly gusty across northern Scotland. And coming into western Scotland, more rain through Tuesday night and into Wednesday, and that could cause some problems. The rain potentially starts to really build up later this week. Some of that rain on Wednesday affecting parts of Northern Ireland, particularly the north coast. For England and Wales, again, a few showers in the west, but many places dry and bright. Temperatures around average for the time of year. There are signs, particularly in the south, that things will warm up later this week. Bye for now.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys and I am at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, where today has been fizzing. We've had this big story about HS2. Well, is it a story? We're going to speak to a lady who thinks that, yes, realistically, HS2 has been scrapped, according to their sources, the Manchester to Birmingham leg. But then the government is saying, no, this is absolute nonsense. I'm not sure who I believe that. Well, I am, but I can't really say that out loud. Now, the culture wars as well. Kemi Badenoch has been talking a lot about the Conservative Party being the only party that knows what a woman is. I'm going to be going out and about in conference as well. And a little bit later on in the hour, we're talking about the ECHR, we're talking about immigration, and we're talking about whether or not actual Conservative Party members think that Rishi Sunak can win at the next election. Some of the answers may surprise you. Patrick Christys, GB News. Yes, and that's before we've even started about a little bit of open warfare between Liz Truss and Jeremy Hunt. Who'd have thought it? But that big HS2 news is coming your way shortly after the headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. Well, the top story this hour is that the government has told GB News that no decisions have been taken on HS2, following reports that the Manchester section of the track had been axed. It follows increased speculation about the rail project's future, with a number of government ministers calling for the project to be reviewed due to spiralling costs. The Chancellor says it shouldn't cost 10 times more to build a railway in the UK than just across the Channel in France. Also in the news today, a second police force is investigating allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. In a statement, Thames Valley Police said it's received new information relating to harassment and stalking allegations dating back to 2018. They added it would be inappropriate to comment on an ongoing investigation. It follows a joint investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4. Russell Brand denies all accusations of criminality against him. Now, the Chancellor has announced plans to freeze the expansion of the civil service and reduce its numbers to pre-pandemic levels. During his speech at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester today, Jeremy Hunt said it would save the government £1 billion next year. Meanwhile, the Chancellor announced tougher benefit sanctions on those who are capable of working but choose not to, and a national living wage rise to £11 an hour.
We promised in our manifesto to raise the national living wage to 2/3 of median income, ending low pay in this country. At the moment, it's £10.42 an hour, and we're waiting for the Low Pay Commission to tell us next year's recommendation. But I confirm today, whatever that recommendation, we'll increase the national living wage to at least £11 an hour next year. That's a pay rise for 2 million workers.
Well, also at Conservative Party conference today, Liz Truss has called on the Chancellor to cut corporation tax back to 19% in his next autumn statement. Speaking at a fringe rally, the former Prime Minister urged the Tory leadership to axe the tax, cut bills and build homes. Her comments came after Jeremy Hunt told GB News no substantial tax cuts are possible this year. Ms Truss said businesses are now choosing not to locate in the UK as a result, and they shouldn't be treated like a cash cow.
We need to unleash business across Britain. We need people to want to invest in our country. We need businesses to be able to expand, to grow, to create new jobs, to create new ideas. That's why I'm calling upon the Chancellor at the autumn statement to put corporation tax back down to 19%. And frankly, if we can get it lower, the better.
Well, in news in the United States, the former President Donald Trump has arrived at a courthouse in New York where he's due to stand trial in a civil fraud case. And a warning, if you're watching on television, there are some flashing images in the next part. Well, the former president is accused of inflating the value of his assets by about $1 billion to secure better loan and insurance terms. Speaking outside the courtroom, though, Mr. Trump claimed he was the victim.
It was never a problem. Everything was perfect. There was no crime. The crime is against me because we have a corrupt district attorney, but we have a corrupt attorney general, and it all comes down from the DOJ that totally coordinated this in Washington because I'm the leading candidate, I'm leading Biden by 10 points.
Donald Trump speaking earlier on today. Now, in news back here at home, using mobile phones in schools should be banned. That's according to the Education Secretary. Gillian Keegan has been saying the move would improve the overall behaviour and education of students and cut down on online bullying. New guidance from the Department for Education will back head teachers in banning them throughout the school day, including at break times. And lastly, junior doctors and consultants in England have begun their three-day walkout, the longest ever period of joint strike action. Until Thursday at 7 a.m, they'll deliver what's being described as Christmas Day levels of staffing. Their last joint strike in September led to almost 130,000 appointments being rescheduled. The government says the walkout is doing a massive disservice to patients. But these doctors told us why they'd gone on strike.
Until and unless there is a credible pay offer, it will mean that doctors of all grades, but especially senior doctors, will continue to leave the country for other places, and the NHS will continue to suffer.
We are not planning for the future. There is going to be no staffing in the NHS. There's going to be no NHS in the future if we don't fight for our pay. But this isn't really necessarily a fight about individual consultant pay per se. We're actually fighting for the very future of the NHS.
Doctors on strike speaking earlier on today. You're with GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
We start with the absolutely massive news of the day, which is the future or potential lack of HS2. A senior government source has told GB News that no decision has been made about whether the northern leg of HS2 should be scrapped, but after a week of speculation, it is being reported through another source that Rishi Sunak has decided to ditch the high-speed rail link between Manchester and Birmingham. And let me tell you, right here at Conservative Party conference, that is the noise, that is the buzz around this place, despite the denials. I am joined initially by GB News' political correspondent, Catherine Forster. Now, Catherine, just tell me, before we go to Conservative MP Wendy Morton, so this will be fascinating, what are you hearing then? Come on.
Well, what I'm hearing is rather different from the government line that no decision has been taken. An impeccable source has told me that HS2 from Birmingham to Manchester, that there's been so much noise about for the last couple of weeks, is going to be scrapped. And we expect that the Prime Minister will make that announcement in his conference speech on Wednesday. And apparently, let's see what happens, but the sort of sweetener, if you like, is likely to be that that money, or some of that money at least, because don't forget, one of the reasons they'll be given for axing it is it's ferociously expensive, but that some money will instead be made available for northern transport, improving the road network, potholes, things like that, and also apparently Northern Powerhouse Rail, which is the east-west line, ideally high speed. That
the thing that loads of people wanted him to do anyway initially.
In the first place, Liverpool to Manchester to Leeds to Hull to Newcastle, to connect up these great northern cities. But of course, 16 million people in the north of England, a lot of them will say they've heard all of this before, because Northern Powerhouse Rail, George Osborne, they've heard it for years, and yet none of this has happened. So I think if and when we hear that HS2 to Manchester has been axed, there will be a big row. We are sitting in a disused former railway station that had
symbolic,
trains
isn't it?
running. Really symbolic. And also, we're sitting in Manchester where people coming up to conference yesterday, sorry, not yesterday, losing track of the days, on Saturday couldn't get a train. There were no trains because of the strikes. There'll be no trains going back.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
big robbery.
So, right, an impeccable source is what you're saying there. So an impeccable source has told GB News, the HS2, the Birmingham to Manchester leg, no, it's not happening. And you can see Michael Gove was in this seat yesterday, refusing to answer the questions. The mood music around this place is quite clear that despite what the government are saying, realistically, we are anticipating an announcement in the next day or so. Conservative MP Wendy Mawson, who this time last year was the Chief Whip.
I was indeed, yes.
Gosh, a lifetime ago.
It does feel like a lifetime ago.
Let's start with HS2, right? What's going on here? Come on, the people need clarity. It's ridiculous. Really.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you. We do need some clarity. Is it, isn't it, is all that I'm hearing. I've not heard the latest that you're picking up from an impeccable source. I'm a West Midlands Member of Parliament. I think it will be, you know, from my perspective, Birmingham absolutely needs HS2. There's so much investment and the future that's built upon that. Go to Curzon Street, you see the investment there. I think, for me, what we need more than ever is clarity. Communities need clarity. Businesses need clarity. There will be people on the route whose properties, businesses may be due for compulsory purchase. They need clarity. But I also
How has it got to this, though, Wendy, with respect? How has it got to this? Because this has been controversial since the day that somebody came up with the idea. We are now here, however many years on, and the amount of taxpayers' money, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, we've got more people paying higher rate tax than pretty much ever. I mean, if one of them doesn't fill out for a tax return correctly, HMRC comes knocking pretty quickly, but apparently if you work for HS2, just spend it.
Well, I think there's a really important point there, which is around accountability. And yes, we've talked about HS2 for, it feels like, forever. It's a big infrastructure project. Surely questions have to be asked about accountability. If it was a business and you were the chief exec of that business or the chief financial officer, you would want to run a tight ship of your costs. So there are lessons here that are going to have to be looked at, have to be learned, because I think it also starts to mean, for me, what does that mean for future infrastructure projects? So I am looking for clarity. Say, you know, Birmingham absolutely needs HS2.
Yeah.
But also, why would we be making the announcement in Manchester in the middle of a party conference?
Well, yeah, I mean...
Why not? Should we not be making that announcement to Parliament? Would be one of the questions that I would be asking, so that members of Parliament can actually ask questions as well.
Look, I completely agree with you. I think that time will probably come. We are here, Conservative Party conference, there's a lot of union flags about, not least in this studio, GB News, Britain's News Channel, all that jazz. I've got to ask, Wendy, you know, the Conservative Party, have they embarrassed Britain with this HS2 thing? Other countries just build stuff.
Well, look, I've been fortunate and I've travelled quite a bit. I'm a former rail minister, but I have to say I was not rail minister for HS2. We'll get that one in there. And there are countries that do build faster. And again, to me, this comes back to now asking really serious questions. Are we gold plating our projects? Safety absolutely matters, of course it does. But what is stopping us from actually getting on and delivering on some of these projects? Because, you know, people out there just want, when we say we're going to do something, they want us to deliver on it, whether it's a railway, whether it's a road, whether it's a new school, or whether it's a new hospital.
OK, all right. And Catherine, what do you think the fallout politically could be to this? Because part of me thinks I'm a little bit on the fence. I think there is a massive cohort of the population that probably doesn't care that much about HS2, whether it wasn't ever going to affect their lives or whether they just thought it was a big waste of money. Then you've got the people directly involved, and then I suppose you've got the group of people who think, well, it wasn't going to affect my life, but it looks like it's not been handled well, therefore I've stopped trusting the government. I mean, politically, how's this going to play if there's the cancellation of the Manchester-Birmingham leg?
Well, certainly there are many people that think that it should be scrapped, that it should never have been built in the first place. But given it was supposed to be a Y, they lopped off the bit to Leeds. Now they've probably going to lop the bit to Manchester. They're going to be left with just a bit to Birmingham, to maybe Old Oak Common, not even in central London. And I think there is consensus amongst people from all across the political spectrum in terms of former Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, of course, they view it as part of their legacy.
Yeah.
People like Andy Burnham, very cross indeed that he's not even been in the room, not been consulted. But I do think there's a real issue for people in the north, 16 million people in the north, that levelling up, we heard the promise, didn't we? Boris Johnson was elected largely on that promise. There's a real risk in building a bit of railway from outside of London to Birmingham and not going anywhere near the north, that they will think, oh, well, so much for levelling up. And of course, these red wall voters are ones that are critical for the Conservatives to keep hold of. They are the ones that helped Boris Johnson to that 80-seat majority. So, OK, they may make promises about Northern Powerhouse Rail, but I certainly think a lot of Northerners will just think, here we go again. You know, London's got the Elizabeth line, beautiful, shiny, new, but different treatment for the north of England.
It's hard to argue with that, isn't it? You know, does the Conservative Party care about the north?
Well, I would say yes, and I am a northerner. You know, I'm from further north of Manchester, and getting the levelling up gender right is so important. We used to talk about the north-south divide. Levelling up was about not just levelling up of infrastructure, but levelling up of opportunity. And if you want to level up opportunity, that means you have to have infrastructure in place. Okay. And so that's why HS2 is one part of it, but it's much more than that as well, isn't it? And so that's why, you know, I'm waiting to see if this announcement is coming, but people do want clarity.
I was at an event last night, and Lord Cruddas stood up and, I mean, teed off big time. OK, Priti Patel was at that event as well. There are a few other MPs there, it must be said. He said openly this Conservative Party at the moment does not represent or listen to its members, and he urged people to stop donating to the Conservative Party until he felt like it re-engaged with its membership base. Okay. How do you feel about that?
Well, I wasn't at that event, so I'll take your word for it. I think, look, the party has always said it's best when it's a broad church, but at the moment it's feeling like we're finding our feet again, and you know. My view is I want to see something done on taxation, because I think there are families who I think feel are being squeezed in the middle. They go out to work all day, but the cost of living is putting a push on it, and on business. And so that for me is a Conservative value.
On that, to be fair, because you were chief whip with Liz Truss, right? And she was actually elected by the membership, and then she was ousted. And replaced by somebody who's never been voted for. Well, the only time he actually stood for election, he lost to Liz Truss. And, you know, taxes are going up. OK, so when you hear someone like Lord Cruddas say you're heading for electoral oblivion and that it's because there's a massive disconnect between the membership and the politicians, I mean, you can see why you can make that case, can't you? I mean, nobody's voted for any of this.
Yeah, so I can see that, so which is why I believe in taxes, which I'm trying to show you how different, you know, how the party is a broad church, can be a broad church. But we want to see some more of those Conservative policies and values coming forward. Ultimately, it is down to the donors of the party, be that the big donors or the small ones, to make their own minds up as to where they put their money. I mean, we saw, I would say, a slightly more Conservative approach on the net zero a week or so ago, and I know in my patch, in my constituency, that's played out quite well. But you're absolutely right that, you know, the party members did not have a vote.
No, and I think that's important, isn't it?
So engaging with them now, listening to them, really matters.
And listening, I would say, on something you just raised there, on things like net zero, OK? Because, look, I'll say this, I think there's a variety of different topics. If we had a referendum on them tomorrow, it wouldn't necessarily be the establishment victory that people think there would be. Net zero would be one of them. So do you think that Rishi Sunak has done the right thing to row back, to slow down the pace of the net zero agenda?
On the net zero, I think he has. I think there's still the ambition there, but going at it at a steadier pace, but taking the country with us, was the right thing to do.
And you, where would you be on another issue, you know, about pulling out the ECHR?
I'm waiting to see where we get to on that one, because again, there's a lot of talk about it, but let's see where we get to. But if we have to, we have to.
OK, because these are some of the big questions.
There are some really big questions.
They're existential, really.
They are for our party, and so but it's most important that we listen to our membership and we listen to the country, and that members of Parliament have their ability to feed into this as well. OK, interesting. And Catherine, as we talk right now, the latest round of polling that I saw, and the Tories about 10 behind, which actually is not a bad return considering that they were about 20 behind and have been for a little while. So things for the Conservative Party moving in the right direction. The mood here, I mean,
I think it's a mixed bag, isn't it, really? Some people are thinking that, you know, they could do it. There's a lot of talk of a hung parliament going around. It's quite bleak.
Yeah, I mean, I think Rishi Sunak will have taken comfort from that opinion poll yesterday that put them only 10 points behind.
Absolutely.
I mean, I use that advisedly, but they've been about 20 points behind Labour consistently for a year. So I think they will hope that this sort of more radical Rishi Sunak and the softening of the green targets, coming out as the motorist friend, etc., those sorts of policies are going to start to bear fruit. But certainly there's plenty of Conservative MPs here. Yes, there's some that think it's still doable, but there's plenty of people that think the election's already lost. And I think that's why we're seeing all this posturing from Suella Braverman, Kemi Badenoch, both government ministers who would really like Rishi Sunak's job.
Wendy, I've got to ask you very finally, and I've asked every single politician on this show, so please don't be offended by this. Would you, excuse me, would you be in favour of Nigel Farage rejoining the Conservative Party?
Oh my goodness, what a question.
I've asked everyone, because he's here.
I don't think he's applied for membership, has he?
If he did...
I'm not saying.
Interesting.
Typical politician's answer, I know.
Well, it is a typical politician's answer, but it's possibly a wise
I don't have a crystal ball.
No, OK, fair enough. All right, I wish we did, though, eh? Right, thank you very much, both of you. Good way to kickstart the final hour of this show. It's wonderful. Wendy Morton, their Conservative MP, this time last year, as I was saying, was the Chief Whip. Slightly quieter conference this year, I imagine, but
Just
there we
a
are.
little bit.
And, of course, Catherine Forster as well, political correspondent. Loads more on that initial story about the future or lack of HS2 on our website. Go to gbnews.com, fastest growing national news site in the country, the best analysis, big opinion, and all the latest breaking news. But we all know that the economy and immigration will be key battlegrounds at the next election, but so will the so-called culture wars. They will play an important role as well. Kemi Badenoch stood up and said, hey, at least this party knows what a woman is. We'll be talking about all of that very shortly. Patrick Christys, GBNews, Britain's News Channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's News Channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Join me, Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner, Monday to Thursday, 9:30 a.m.
Who benefits from that? Not the British public.
And on Fridays, join us, Tom Harwood
and Ellie Costello from Britain's Newsroom.
That's what you get with this show. That's fantastic.
If it's happening, we're talking about it on Britain's Newsroom.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's News Channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
the Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, 5:24. You are watching or listening to me, Patrick Christys, here in not-so-sunny Manchester at the Conservative Party conference. And what a day it's been so far, but it's only hotting up because a university professor who was cancelled by his own students has announced the creation of a faculty for common sense. That's right. Eric Kaufmann was the head of politics at Birkbeck University of London. He's now creating a centre of heterodox social science, it's more interesting than it sounds, at the University of Buckingham, which will investigate woke attitudes and controversial subjects such as trans rights and critical race theory. Now, this comes hot off the back of Kemi Badenoch speaking right here at the Conservative Party conference, saying that the Tories are the only party on the side of common sense. And if Labour MPs won't tell us what a woman is, then what else aren't they telling us? Well, it's interesting, isn't it? The culture wars, for a long time, was laughed at, scorned, saying, oh, it's the only thing the Tories have got is the culture wars. Well, now we're starting to see some other things as well, like a row back on net zero, etc. But actually, it is an important issue, isn't it? Do you not think it's an important issue for you, for the way that your children are brought up, for the attitudes and societal norms that you have? And the Conservatives, Kemi Badenoch in particular, being very strong on that today. LGBT Conservatives board member and GB News contributor, fan favourite, the wonderful Albie Amankona, joins me now. Do you think that the Conservatives are winning the culture wars? And if so, why?
Well, first of all, I know Eric Kaufmann quite well, and I think what he's doing at the University of Buckingham is a very exciting venture for him. I do think we need more common sense in society, and when we listen to brilliant Tory MPs and ministers like Kemi Badenoch, or even people on the back benches like Priti Patel, I do certainly think they're speaking in a language which is much more similar to the average voter than we hear from Keir Starmer's Labour Party, where they're talking about all of these lofty ideas, but they don't really have much bark in their
What
bite.
is the culture wars? OK, so what is it? Is it as simple as there's an aggressive militant group of hyper-woke individuals who want to shut everything else down? I mean, what are they fighting against?
Look, what I like about Kemi Badenoch is she's a rational voice. I actually think that both the woke and anti-woke side of the culture war can actually be equally as bad as each other. They both want to cancel each other. They don't want to listen to each other. They don't actually want to find solutions. They just want to have a fight. Yeah. Whereas Kemi Badenoch, she wants to find solutions. She wants to find a way forwards. And that's why I think the Conservatives are winning the culture war.
OK, now this is fascinating because we also had reports of, I don't think you've gone public with this or anyone's really gone public with this so far, so this is potentially a bit of an exclusive for us, about something that happened last night, am I right?
Yes.
I'm going to throw it over to you because it ties in, OK, I think, between, you know, an aggressive culture war and potential cancel culture, but playing out in real life. Go on.
Well, this is what I mean when I say it happens from both sides. So, as he's mentioned, I'm on the board of the LGBT Conservatives. I'm the vice chairman for Outreach, and I was having a conversation with one of our members earlier on at our stand-up conference just down from here, who was telling me about how he and a bunch of gay Conservatives went to a gay bar in Manchester. I believe it was called the New Union Bar, and there was a drag act which was on that was making lots of rude and derogatory comments about Conservatives and about Suella Braverman and making them feel very uncomfortable in this venue. And apparently some of the other patrons in the venue were being quite aggressive and rude and unkind towards them. And then they decided that they were going to stay and have their drinks, even though they were getting all of this abuse held at them. And then about half an hour later, out of absolutely nowhere, 4 security guards walked up to them and physically threw them out of the bar. Physically manhandled them and threw them out of this bar. I just think that's absolutely appalling that these places, they say they want diversity, but not diversity of thought, and they're chucking people out just for being Conservatives. It's terrible.
I mean, that is absolutely staggering, seriously. I mean, this just should not be happening in this country, really, where if you happen to have the Conservative ideology and way of thinking, that you will end up being kicked out of a bar of your choice, but that appears to have happened.
I mean, it's appalling. I mean, if you actually look at the Conservatives' record on LGBT issues since 2010, we are the party that brought in same-sex marriage. We are the party that brought in LGBT relationship and sex education in schools. We are the party that's going to end HIV transmissions by 2030, and yet our party members who have been fighting for those causes are being thrown out of places where they want to spend their money just for their political beliefs.
This is why it's important, isn't it? This is why people like Kemi Badenoch and talking up whether it is, I say what a woman is, or whether it's about people, not pigeonholing people, this kind of, cancel culture issue that appears to exist, the kind of woke mind virus, whatever Elon Musk would call it, and, all the culture wars. This is why it's so important, because it appears that right now, in this country, at this conference, we have had a group of gay Conservatives who have been forcefully evicted from an event just for their beliefs.
Precisely. They didn't do anything wrong in the situation. They just wanted to be ordinary paying customers, enjoying a night out on the town in Manchester, and they had their night completely ruined just because of their political beliefs. If this was any other group, Patrick, people would be crying from the rafters.
Can I ask you, forgive me for asking this, so it's just popped into my mind really, but as a gay man and also somebody who's an ethnic minority as well, do you feel more under threat for being a Conservative than you do for any of those things?
Well, I don't tend to feel that under threat by things in general, Patrick. I'm quite thick-skinned. But I think certainly there is a real viciousness that people have towards minorities that don't fit the mould, and towards minorities whether or not you are gay, black, or from a different kind of religion who is not from the liberal left.
Yeah.
If you don't agree with that dogma of wokeism, you are cast aside and seen as a stowaway. And I feel at home here at the Conservative Party conference. I'm here with my people, and I think it is such a shame that our members of the party and of the LGBT Conservatives have been treated this way.
Yep. Albie, look, thank you very much, and thank you for coming on and highlighting that very real issue, because that is exactly what we're talking about cancel culture and about all of that stuff in action there. So, Albie Amankona, wonderful. Now, as promised, Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch did tell the Tory Party conference that her party is on the right side of the culture wars by knowing what the definition of a woman is. Here she is.
I pay tribute to the many women's and LGBT groups, such as Conservatives for Women, Sex Matters, and the LGB Alliance, who, despite unbelievable opposition, kept fighting this policy, refusing to be cancelled and speaking the truth. There's no other party that will defend common sense. Next week, Labour will tell the country that it is ready for government. But ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you this. If Labour MPs won't tell us what a woman is, what else aren't they telling us?
Well, there we go. Kemi Badenoch there, never knowingly undersold. Many people tip her as the next leader of the Conservative Party, although I'm sure the current leader of the Conservative Party won't want people talking about his successor any time soon. Loads more still to come between now and 6. I will talk to a Tory MP about the migrant crisis. That will be happening in just a couple of minutes' time, on the day that GB News reveal 25,000 people have now crossed the Channel on small boats this year. And one of the big arguments raging here at conference is about the ECHR. Should we get out of it? Should we take back control properly of our laws, our borders, and crucially, our money? But first, your latest news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. The headlines this hour. A government source has told GB News that no decisions have been taken on HS2 following reports that the Manchester section of the line had been axed. It follows increased speculation about the rail project's future, with a number of government ministers calling for the project to be reviewed due to spiralling costs. The Chancellor says it shouldn't cost 10 times more to build a railway in the UK than just across the Channel in France. Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham has called on the Prime Minister to end the shambles on HS2. Liz Truss has called on the Chancellor to cut corporation tax back to 19% in his next autumn statement. Speaking at a Fringe rally, the former Prime Minister urged the Tory leadership to axe the tax, cut bills and build homes. And a second police force is investigating allegations against the comedian Russell Brand. In a statement, Thames Valley Police said it had received new information relating to harassment and stalking allegations dating back to 2018. It follows a joint investigation by the Sunday Times and Channel 4. Russell Brand denies all accusations of criminality. Those are the headlines. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Looking at the markets today, the pound buying you $1.2121 and €1.1552 euros. The price of gold is £1,511 and 16 pence an ounce. The FTSE 100 has just closed at 7,510 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News, investments that matter.
Well, I've got a very special treat for you, actually, because I've ended up with 2 Tory MPs for the price of 1. But one of Rishi Sunak's famous 5 pledges is to stop the boats. So it's perhaps unfortunate for the PM that, of course, we reached a landmark today. GB News can reveal that 25,000 migrants have now crossed the Channel in small boats so far this year. We know the drill, don't we? £8 million a day on hotels. Whether or not we can actually deport any of these people, what's going on. I'm joined now by Sir Robert Goodwill, who is the Conservative MP for Scarborough and Whitby, and I've got Sir John Redwood as well, who's the Tory MP for Woking. So I'm the only person who hasn't been knighted yet, by the looks of things, which makes me feel complete. Only a matter of time. Yeah, I'll have to hold you to that. Look, Robert, I'll start with you, OK? In fact, I speak to people in Scarborough quite regularly who say they've been badly affected by the use of asylum seeker hotels in that area. So what's going on? Why haven't we got to grips with this yet? Surely you need to.
Well, the hotels in Scarborough have been used for Afghan refugees, and they've actually been welcomed by local people. And most of those have now moved on to permanent accommodation. So we didn't have quite the same problem as some of the other parts of the country. I mean, the numbers are worrying, but it's down on last year. And I think we're all sort of hanging out waiting to see what the Supreme Court judgment is, because the appeal court was a 2-1 decision. And I think if the Rwanda scheme can go ahead, that'll be a real disincentive to people to pay these horrible people smugglers to actually bring them to the United Kingdom when they're in a safe country already, namely France.
It's a key point, that. And Sir John, what would you do if the Supreme Court says that we can't do Rwanda?
Well, I would legislate. I think we have to assert ourselves. And I and others did make a suggestion when they were planning the last lot of legislation that there would be an amendment you could make, which would be a clear instruction to our courts that they had to obey the law as Parliament had decided it and not refer it on to an overseas court. And I think that would be a necessary step if our own court doesn't reflect the will of the British people, which I'm sure is to have a safe haven to send people to who come here illegally.
One of the massive debates raging at the moment at this conference, and just with people around really, is about the ECHR. There is a sense at the moment, I think, of desperation when it comes to what's happening in the Channel and the amount of taxpayers' money that's being used, or some may say wasted. Where are you on the ECHR?
I think it would send out a very negative message, because many of the countries in the former Soviet Union, in the east of Europe, their human rights are something that are being eroded every day, being attacked every day. Countries like Belarus and the European Court of Human Rights and the Council of Europe, it's something they really hold dear. So I think it could send out some
They're not in the ECHR, though, are they, Belarus?
No, they're not, and neither are the Russian Federation.
Yeah.
And that's, but the Council of Europe are very strong on criticising some of the human rights abuses that go in those places.
Can I just ask with that, though, why is that any of our concern? How does that affect people in Britain right now who are seeing people come across the channel that we can't get rid of? I mean, what's Belarus got to do with us?
Well, the European Court of Human Rights, the standards that many of us want to see in terms of democracy and freedom are something that are protected by that court. And those countries, I think, for us to leave, they would certainly be seen as undermining people in some of those countries.
That's the argument, isn't it? So, John, I'll bring you in. That if we were to pull out of the ECHR, if we were to try and get the deterrent that people hope would deter the 25,000 people who crossing English Channel, if we were to pull out the ECHR, we would lose the right to lecture Russia and Belarus on the world stage about human rights abuses, would we?
Well, that's arguable either way. I'm not recommending we do pull out of the whole ECHR. What I'm saying is that we should have a targeted legal intervention through our Parliament where we think it is impeding us in a perfectly legitimate aim to stop this awful people trafficking with the risk to lives and all the other negative effects that we see. And we have done this before without pulling out of the whole ECHR, because we had a finding against us as a country that we needed to give votes to prisoners, and our Parliament said, no, we've considered this, we do not wish to give votes to prisoners, we will not give votes to prisoners, but we're not pulling out of the whole of the ECHR, and that worked perfectly well.
Okay, so do you think then that we should be making more noise about this solution? Because at the moment it does appear relatively black and white to your average man and woman, I think, that it's either stay in the ECHR and accept whatever it is that the Supreme Court and then the ECHR tell us that we can and can't do, or we pull out of the thing. But there is a middle ground, isn't there?
Yeah, as John said, we're an independent state, we can legislate. And in particular, what I really find frustrating and annoying about this whole situation is that I was Immigration Minister under David Cameron, and we actually went out to the refugee camps around Syria, and we brought families to the UK, we were prepared for them, we had housing for them. And at the moment, these people are coming across are people chosen by organised criminals, not people who are most in need. 90% of them are young men. There's a lot of women that I think we should be helping around the world.
Well, where are the women and children is the usual thing that I say whenever I look at one of these boats. And I know that the vast majority of the people who do see these videos say exactly the same thing. Where are the women and children? I mean, we do have a number of German NGOs as well who are apparently operating in the Mediterranean who are, again, I will argue, making it a lot easier for these people smugglers to transport their human cargo.
When we cleared the camp at Songap, there were 750 people there that we took. Of those 750, only 8 were Syrians, and 90% were young men. We really need to reach out. There are people in desperate need of our help. We've done it with the Hong Kong people, we've done it with the Afghans, we've done it with Ukrainians. So we're not a nation that doesn't understand our obligations. Yeah. But these people are chosen by organised criminals. Yeah. These are people who have money to pay the organised criminals. These are not the most needy people in the world.
Now, we've spoken quite a bit there about illegal immigration, OK? What about the legal side of it, Sir John? For a lot of people at the next election, that's going to be a huge bone of contention for them, because they're going to go into that election, by the looks and the sounds of it, with 2 major political parties in this country who aren't going to do anything about the legal numbers of immigration.
Well, I would like us to control the legal numbers rather more. I strongly take the view that we don't want to invite in a lot of people to take low-paid jobs and undercut our labour market. And whilst that may be cheap for the companies, it's not cheap for the taxpayers and the state, because obviously if they're coming in for very low-paid jobs, there are big costs in providing subsidised housing and school places and medical care and all the other things they're going to need, which doesn't get weighed into the accounts. So I do think we need to have much more control on that and put more money behind productivity-raising measures, giving people the chance of a better paid job who are already settled here with more machine power and computing power at their elbows.
I do suppose that the argument to that would be, look, Britain is a massively multicultural country. We've absolutely thrived off it, and we need low-skilled immigration to prop up our economy, don't we?
Well, certainly in my constituency, we have lots of care homes who are unable to recruit local people. Now, you could argue whether some of those people should be in work when they're on benefits, but they're desperate to get people. And it's not a cheap option for a company to bring people across. You've got to pay the health surcharge, you've got to pay the cost of the visas. Right. But without those, you know, our elderly people would not be cared for at the present time. And that really needs
so again,
similarly with seasonal work, with agricultural work.
A kind of difference of attitude within the Conservative Party on that, I suppose.
But I think there's some good work going on by the Employment Department, which we need to progress and put more resource behind, because there are hundreds of thousands of people of working age who might like a job, who might be able to do so with more support, who want a better rate of pay for understandable reasons. And I think we need to work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, we've covered quite a lot of ground here, really, which is when it comes to the ECHR, you know, do you stay in, do you stay out? Is there a happy medium? Yes, there is. So, you know, range of views there. When it comes to the legal immigration side, yeah, again, you're obviously kind of on the side where, you know, we want to bring this down, want to get people. There's no point importing a load of people who are going to do low-skilled jobs and maybe not be a net benefit to society. But then there is very much the other side of it as well, which is, well, you know, we need people in these roles. I've got to ask you a slightly different question now, chaps, if that's OK. Would you welcome Nigel Farage back into the Conservative Party?
I know Nigel very well. I was a member of the European Parliament with him for 5 years, and Nigel could not be a member of any party that he wasn't the leader of, simple as that.
OK. So, OK, whereas no, you're not ruling it out entirely. I mean, that would be a drastic shift. What about you, Sir John? Would you be OK for Nigel to come back in?
I don't do hypothetical questions. If Nigel asks to join the Conservative Party, then ask me whether I think that's a good idea or not.
But he'd insist on being leader. He would only join a party if he could be leader, and there's no way he's going to be coming into the party, I don't think.
No, OK.
It's the Conservative Party is a team, and I know Nigel well. He's not really a team player unless he can be the captain. OK, interesting. I asked that because obviously he is here. He's present. He's going to be doing his show here later. He's probably around the corner, actually. He's going to be doing his show here later on. Just one final one to you both. We can't get around the fact that the Conservative Party are, I think, by the best polling at the minute, 10 points behind. What are you doing wrong? We've had some very difficult situations in terms of the pandemic, followed by the energy crisis, and the government's had to spend a lot of money, which people agreed that we should, the furlough scheme, help with people's energy bills, and that's resulted in unprecedentedly high levels of tax, which instinctively we want to bring down. And the question is, can we do that before the election? And I think we should look at how we can reduce tax, particularly on those lowest paid, raising the tax threshold for the lowest paid, increasing the minimum wage, which I think the Chancellor's spoken about. So we do need to demonstrate we are a party of low tax.
Same question to you. I mean, what's going wrong?
Well, I agree that we can do more popular things, and I would say something seems to have gone right in the last couple of weeks, because if you'd asked me that question 2 weeks ago, you'd have said we were 20 points behind. So I think as soon as you start talking and doing some things that are more popular and are authentically Conservative, the disappointed Conservatives, and that's the problem we're talking about, start to say, well, all right, OK, we understand it. So I would encourage the Prime Minister to do more of all of that. And yes, we need targeted tax cuts to help the self-employed, help small businesses, to get our energy costs down a bit more. And they can be paid for. There are reductions in public spending, which we should be making, so that we don't have inflationary problems on the back of it.
Well, watch this space. Oh, very insightful conversation up both of you. Thank you very much. There's Robert Goodwill there. Of course, he's the Conservative MP for Scarborough and Whitby, and Sir John Redwood, who's the Tory MP for Wokingham. Well, I have been sat here long enough, I think, haven't I? And I just want to get out, get amongst the action. I am here in Manchester at the Conservative Party conference. So when I come back, I'm going to be having a little bit of a walkabout. I'm just going to be, well, showing you around the gaff a little bit. It's quite nice here. There's a fair bit going on. So we'll do a little bit of a walk and talk. Patrick Christys here on GB News. We are Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the live desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Well, good evening, everybody. It is Patrick Christys here at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester. The show's nearly finished, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of a walkthrough. This, of course, has been our studio. So this is where all the action has been taking place. Numerous different MPs, cabinet members, etc. have been getting grilled by a variety of different presenters here. Spin it back on round over my way here. I'm going to walk you through a bit of the conference. So, this is the NFU stall here. Farming, obviously, big on the agenda. Now, if you see Catherine Forster, the back of Catherine Forster's head here, she got the scoop of the conference so far. Catherine Forster, she's running away from me, don't worry, keep following me. She got the scoop of the conference so far, which was the big news, which was that apparently Rishi Sunak is actually going to scrap the Manchester to Birmingham leg of HS2. It's been furiously denied by insiders, but what they are saying is, well, they're not denying it, they're saying it's inaccurate, they're not categorically denying it. That's important. Come with me here, okay? So, what you're going to see is the bank of other media outlets all over there. None of them, may I say, with anything quite like the setup that we've got here at GB News, may I add. So there you go. That's where all the, some people would call them, the Westminster elite hang out. This is the main lobby. So we've got a map of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which of course they've all painted blue because that is what the Conservatives will be wanting to see at the next general election. We are currently here around the Manchester area, and there's a big sign up there at the top that says, oh, it's just changed, but it's long-term decisions, okay? So look, this is the kind of things that they've got there. Their 5 pledges, their major priorities, their halve inflation, that's it. Long-term decisions for a brighter future, and that has been a big kind of mainstay of this conference so far. Follow me back in here, okay? We're heading towards the Conservative Party shop now, where there is a heck of a lot of merchandise. Bizarrely, I say bizarrely, you know, maybe get with the programme a little bit, but a lot of it has got Margaret Thatcher's face on it, including some knitwear. Here we go. So you could get no for your loved one for Christmas. What have we got here? Yeah, that's her. You turn if you want to. This lady's not for turning. I think one had Churchill on it. There we go. Never give in, never. Sir Winston Churchill. Now, you can say what you like about them being icons, etc. There is possibly a question mark about if you have to hark this far back to your leaders, maybe, you know, the current one could be a bit more inspiring. Keep coming round with me here. We won't look at this lot. We don't like them, okay? And you've got a load of stalls, things like the FA, all of this stuff. There's a cafe through here. So a little bit earlier on, this is all a buzz. It's really humming. And I'm going to circle back on round towards the back of the GB News stall here, where I'm hoping we might be able to reintroduce you to a bit of a surprise guest, a regular, a favourite on GB News, who has been missing for a week, okay? So she's been missing for a week, but she's back. Can we see her? Was she brave enough to wear red to a Conservative Party conference? Hello.
Oh, hello.
How are you?
Very good.
That was our very own Bev Turner.
Hi.
You're back.
I'm back. I was on the telly this morning and then jumped on the train. Don't mention the word train in here today. Jumped on the train to Manchester, 2 hours. Here I am. Who needs HS2 to go any further than that?
No, exactly. And you are going to be here doing your show from here tomorrow, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I'm going to be here with Andrew Pearce in the morning, 9:30 till 12. This is my first conference.
Okay.
I've been to one before, but I was just kind of an onlooker. It's quite something, isn't it?
Yeah.
Politics is an interesting crowd, Patrick.
No, it's alive. I must say, I've been actually quite struck by the number of young Conservatives that there are here, because you normally think, you know, it's quite a stuffy event, Tories tend to be a bit older, whatever the stereotypes are. But there's been quite a lot of young people.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fringe events taking place later on. There's no doubt... Andrea Leadsom, in fact, is just here. We can say a quick hello. Hello, Andrea. How are you? Okay. What do you make of the scrapping of HS2? Is it happening or not?
Well, you'll have to wait and see when the Prime Minister says.
Okay, all right, well, there we are. Okay, well, fortunately, I don't have too much more time to press there because we are just about to wrap things up, I think. But I will be back again tomorrow, 3 till 6. Nigel Farage is live here this evening, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But the wonderful Michelle Dewberry will be with you for the next hour. I've been Patrick Christys. I'll see you tomorrow at 3. Take it easy, people.
Afternoon, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Bit of a north-south split today, fairly dull, damp one in the south, something a bit brighter across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Some quite heavy rain developing, though, through the evening time over central and eastern parts of England, particularly the East Midlands, up through Lincolnshire and North Norfolk. Could even see a few thunderstorms. We could see quite a lot of heavy rain for a time overnight across parts of East Anglia especially. It does all scoot away. Clearer skies will allow temperatures to drop down to single figures in the countryside across parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland. Further south with a lot of clouds, it'll stay pretty warm overnight. It's quite a grey start then across East Anglia and the southeast, but clouds should tend to drift away, and then it'll be a case of sunshine and showers. Most of the showers